Good afternoon, members of the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Welcome to today's agenda. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Carlton.
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblywoman Dickman.
Here.
Assemblywoman Duran.
Here.
Assemblyman Flores.
Present.
Assemblyman Frierson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblywoman Kasama.
Here.
Assemblywoman Martinez.
Present.
Assemblywoman Marzola.
Here.
Assemblyman O'Neill.
Here.
Assemblywoman Tolles.
Here.
Chair Howdagi.
Here. Madam Secretary, please indicate that all members are present. Welcome to everyone tuning in over the internet. Before we start, I would like to make some housekeeping announcements. Please remember, all exhibits, written testimony, and amendments must be submitted by noon on the business day prior to the committee meeting. Persons wishing to provide testimony or attend the meeting virtually must pre-register on the legislature's website. The public is strongly encouraged to submit written testimony in advance of the meeting by emailing the Assembly Manager for Commerce and Labor. Zoom chat is reserved strictly for committee business. Members, please remember to keep your cameras on at all times. This will help us ensure that we have a quorum unless you are stepping away for non-committee related business. Members and presenters, please remember to be muted at all times. Unmute yourself to speak and then promptly mute yourself when you are done. Thank you, everyone, and let's begin with today's agenda. We are going to start with the work session portion of the agenda and take the 4 bills that we have to work session. We will start with Assembly Bill 200, and we have our policy analyst, Ms. Pasloff-Thomas, here to present Assembly Bill 200.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Margie Thomas for the record. The first bill is Assembly Bill 200, and it was sponsored by Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod. It was heard on March 22nd, and it revises provisions governing veterinary medicine. There are 7 proposed amendments by Alyssa Nave-Worth with Greenberg Traurig, and it is attached behind the document. Briefly, the 7 amendments are to amend Section 2 of the bill to add group of animals to the definition of veterinary telemedicine. The second is to amend subsection 3 of Section 3 of the bill to replace shall be deemed to have a veterinarian client-patient relationship with shall have established a veterinary client-patient relationship to clarify that such a relationship is established if the conditions set forth in subsection 3 are met. The third proposed amendment is to delete subsection 3D and 3F of Section 3 of the bill and replace 3D of that section with language that more closely aligns with the American Veterinary Medical Association Model Practice Act concerning the veterinarian client-patient relationship. The fourth proposed amendment is to amend subsection 4 of Section 3 of the bill to delete through other means to clarify that a veterinarian client-patient relationship cannot be established, only maintained by veterinary telemedicine. The fifth proposed amendment is to amend Section 4 of the bill to clarify that a supervising veterinarian must have an established veterinarian client-patient relationship to supervise a veterinary technician via veterinary telemedicine. The sixth proposed amendment is to amend subsection 2A of Section 6 of the bill to align with existing board language regarding courses of continuing education for veterinarians or veterinarian technicians by adding approved courses. And the final proposed amendment would be to delete Section 7 for the purpose of clarifying that a veterinarian practicing telemedicine is required to be licensed in Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pasloff-Thomas. Members, any discussion? I'm going to switch, please. It looks like I have a comment from Assembly Member Dickman. And Assembly Member Tolles, I see you next. Okay.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I didn't get a chance to really look at the amendment, but I just wanted to say, for the record, I think AB 200 is a good bill. With a proposed amendment that I've seen, I think it would be a great one. We have a veterinarian shortage in northern Nevada and in the rurals. It can take weeks to get an initial appointment to establish that vet-patient-client relationship. And it's been horribly exacerbated by the pandemic. Recently, one of my Yorkies became ill. I couldn't get an appointment with her regular vet for 2 weeks. And we had to take her to an emergency vet, but then they wouldn't see her because they're closed 2 days a week due to a staffing shortage, which has become worse, in the past year. The point I'm trying to make is that telemed visit can easily be followed with an in-person visit when an appointment becomes available. And there's one other point I wanted to make. Every issue I've had with my many dogs over the many years have been totally unrelated to any previous issues they'd had. So the relationship will be somewhat irrelevant to helping them. And it seems if that's the case, the only telemedicine that would be appropriate is a follow-up to a previous procedure or an in-person visit. At any rate, I will be voting for the bill, but I hope it's made an even better bill as it makes its way through the process. And I hope the sponsors will work with other interested parties to achieve this. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Assemblymember Dickman. Assemblymember Tolles, I believe I saw your hand up as well.
Much, Chair, and I guess I don't see the sponsor here. I just wanted to
We-
confirm that this is a friendly amendment, this is an amendment that the sponsor has accepted.
There, I believe we do have Ms. Alyssa Nayworth here to help answer questions, but I believe there might have been, just to clarify, I believe there might have been an amendment submitted for it as an exhibit. That is not the amendment that is in your work session documents. The amendment that we will be the language that you will be voting on, the amendment you will be voting on is the language in your work session documents, not any other documents that just might be submitted as an exhibit on NALIS. So it's the document you have before you.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow up with just, I'll follow up and continue to clarify. I'm a yes on this, and I just want to make sure I'm still a yes on this, but I'll be a yes out of committee, and I think this is what I was anticipating, but I'll follow up afterwards. Thank you. And thanks for the clarification between the two, the exhibit and the work session document. I appreciate that.
And I will ask, since we do have Ms. Nayworth here, that the amendment on Nellis is not a friendly amendment, correct?
That is correct. The amendment that was just reviewed by committee staff is an amendment that was collaboratively put together by the Nevada Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners, the Nevada Veterinary Medical Association, and the American Veterinary Medical Association.
Thank you, Ms. Nayworth. Okay, at this time, I will entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 200.
So moved, Assemblyman Frierson.
Okay, I have, I'm sorry, I don't know where that second came from.
Me.
Oh, okay, perfect. So I have a motion to amend and do pass from Speaker Frierson, and I have a second by Assemblymember Hardy. Madam Secretary, will you please take a roll call vote?
Madam Chair, did we get to do comments?
Oh, yes. Is there any comments on the motion?
And thank you. I had tried to be recognized for a question, but that's okay. I just wanted to say that I'm still trying to figure all this out. There's more good in here than what I have questions about, but I still do have some concerns about the bill. So I'll be supporting it today, but I still do have a lot of concerns, and I echo Ms. Dickman's, Assemblywoman Dickman's concerns about some of this. But thank you very much.
And I apologize, Vice Chair. I usually have all the faces up, and they're so small sometimes that I don't see everyone raising their hand. So I apologize for just blowing right past you. Okay. Madam Secretary, wait, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, and Madam Secretary, will you please take a roll call vote?
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Considine,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Dickman,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Duran,
Yes.
Assemblyman Flores,
Yes.
Assemblyman Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hardy,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Kasama,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Martinez,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
Assemblyman O'Neill,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles, Assemblywoman Tolles,
Yes.
Chair Howdigi.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Secretary. The motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assembly Member Bill Bray Axelrod. Okay. Next item on our work session is Assembly Bill 210. Ms. Paslow-Thomas, will you present Assembly Bill 210 to the committee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 210 revises provisions governing the practice of chiropractic. It is sponsored by Assemblyman Yeager, and it was heard on March 22nd. There are two proposed amendments. The first is by John Puro with the Clark County Public Defender's Office. It was discussed during committee, and it proposes to amend subsection 4 of section 18 of the bill to change the punishment provided in that subsection from a category B felony to a category D felony, which is punishable by 1 to 4 years in prison and a possible fine of not more than $5,000. The second proposed amendment is by Dan Musgrove on behalf of the Chiropractors Physicians Board of Nevada, and that is to revise the definition of business entity to exclude certain business entities owned by certain licensed providers of healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paslow-Thomas. Members, any discussion on Assembly Bill 210? Assembly Member Tolles?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I went back and I rewatched this hearing because I still had some questions about the business entity piece. And I've been speaking with the sponsor and stakeholders to continue to work through some of my questions. And so I'm going to be a yes today, but I'm still working through that. I will let the chair and sponsor know if I change. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other discussion? Assemblymember Dickman?
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I would have to agree with Assemblywoman Tolles. I was leaning strongly no because of the business entity things, but I will vote yes in committee, but I want to reserve my right to change, please.
And Assemblymember O'Neill?
I'll just say ditto to make it fast, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Hardy?
I will say ditto as well. I'll vote yes. I've done some communication with some of the stakeholders as well to get a little bit more clarity and comfort on this, so I will vote it out today. Thank you.
Members? I'm going to double check so that I don't skip through anyone. Okay, at this time, I will accept a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved, Madam Chair. Assemblyman Flores.
I have a motion to amend and do pass from Assemblyman Flores. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Chair.
I have a second from Assemblymember Marzola. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, Madam Secretary, will you please call a roll call vote?
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Considine,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Dickman,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Duran,
Yes.
Assemblyman Flores,
Yes.
Assemblyman Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hardy,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Kasama,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Martinez,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
Assemblyman O'Neill,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Yes.
Chair Howdigi.
Yes. Motion carries, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Yeager. Okay, a next item on our work session is Assembly Bill 250. Ms. Pasloff-Thomas, will you walk us through Assembly Bill 250, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 250 revises provisions relating to insurance, which provides for the payment of expenses not covered by Medicare. It is sponsored by Assemblywoman Housekeeping, and it was heard on March 24th. There are 3 proposed amendments by the sponsor of the bill. The first is to amend Section 1 of the bill to specify that the policies of insurance that provide for the payment of expenses which are not covered by Medicare described in the bill must be a Medicare supplemental policy as defined in 42 CFR 403.205, and to specify that a person may, during his or her open enrollment period, purchase a Medicare supplemental policy made available by any insurer with the same or lesser benefits. The second proposed amendment would be to amend the bill to indicate that the Medicare supplemental policy also includes plans offered by public entities that otherwise meet the requirements of 42 CFR 403.205. The third proposed amendment is to amend the effective date of the bill to January 1st, 2022. Thanks.
Thank you. And we will go to discussion now. And before I go to the members, I do want to start the discussion off. I've spoken with my policy analyst about adding a 4th amendment to Assembly Bill 250. The 4th amendment would be to add a co-sponsor, Assembly Member Melissa Hardy, to the bill. We had a nice discussion this afternoon and had the exact same bill, both brought to us by constituents who it was a very important issue to. The members, I know that amendment is not on the work session document before you, but I would like to propose a 4th amendment to add a co-sponsor of Assemblymember Hardy onto the bill. Any other discussion on the work session bill before you?
I just want to say thank you. I appreciate that.
You are very welcome, Assemblymember Hardy. Members, any other discussion?
If you're ready, Madam Chair, I would move, amend, and do pass on Assembly Bill 250.
Thank you,
with all
Vice Chair.
4 amendments.
Thank you, Vice Chair Carlton. I have a motion to amend and do pass with all 4 amendments from Vice Chair Carlton. Do I have a second?
Second, Considine.
I have a second by Assemblymember Considine. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none. Madam Secretary, would you please take a roll call vote?
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Considine,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Dickman,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Duran,
Yes.
Assemblyman Flores,
Yes.
Assemblyman Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hardy,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Kasama,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Martinez,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
Assemblyman O'Neill,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Yes.
Chair Housekeeping.
Yes, motion carries, and I will assign that floor statement to myself. The last item on our work session document today is Assembly Bill 290. Ms. Pasloff-Thomas, would you walk us through Assembly Bill 290, please?
Assembly Bill 290 revises provisions relating to financial institutions. It is sponsored by Assemblywoman Housekeeping, and it was heard on March 29th, and there are no proposed amendments.
Thank you, Ms. Pasloff-Thomas. At this time, I would accept, any discussion, members? Sorry, I was jumping the gun a little bit. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I would accept a motion to do pass.
So moved, Madam Chair.
I have a motion to do pass from Vice Chair Carlton. Do I have a second?
Second, Assemblywoman Martinez.
I have a second by Assemblywoman Martinez. Members, any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none. Madam Secretary, will you please take a roll call vote?
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Considine,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Dickman,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Duran,
Yes.
Assemblyman Flores,
Yes.
Assemblyman Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hardy,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Kasama,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Martinez,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
Assemblyman O'Neill,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Yes.
Chair Howdigi.
Yes, motion carries, and I will also assign that floor statement to myself. Thank you, members. That concludes our work session portion of the hearing. And thank you, Ms. Paslow-Thomas, for walking us through the bills. Okay, members, the next items on our agenda is the bill hearing portion of our meeting today. For those watching over the internet and the presenters with us today, I do want to let you know that I will be taking the bills out of order this afternoon. I am going to start with Assembly Bill 303 and then move to Assembly Bill 312. And last, we will end with Assembly Bill 246. With that, I will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 303, which removes certain exceptions relating to certain requirements for paid leave. We have Assembly Member Sandra Armstrong Summers with us to present the bill, and she also has some co-presenters with her. Welcome to the Committee on Commerce and Labor. When you're ready, Ms. Armstrong, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairwoman Howdigi. Chandra Summers Armstrong, Assembly District 6 for the record. Thank you. I had a little thing up on the screen there, kind of distracted me. Thank you so much for giving this time today for me to present Assembly Bill 303. So, Senate Bill 312 passed during the 80th legislative session in 2019, and it created a category of paid leave for certain employee groups. The advocates for Make It Work Nevada brought what is now Assembly Bill 303 to me with concerns for the need to clarify language. There is only one objective of this bill, and that is with this amendment, there is an amendment which should be on Nellis, and the goal is to ensure that employers are made aware that they may not consider state and federal holidays in calculating paid time off. I'm now going to pass this presentation off to Quentin Savoie of Make It Work Nevada, and he will go into more detail. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee. For the record, my name is Quentin Savoie, that's Quentin-Savoir. I am the Deputy Director at Make It Work Nevada, where we work alongside Black women, families, and communities of color for economic, racial, and reproductive justice. We really appreciate the opportunity to present Assembly Bill 303, a clarifying measure intended to protect both Nevada's workers and businesses. As the Assemblywoman stated, in 2019, we passed SB 312, a measure that provided paid sick days for Nevada's workforce. At the time, some 522,000 Nevadans had no access to paid sick days. They were often struck with the hardships of choosing between going to work sick to earn their salary or missing a day to care for themselves or a loved one and running the risk of not quite being able to make ends meet come Friday. The measure provided that families would no longer have to choose. They'd have something of a safety net to protect them from financial upheaval and the gut-wrenching decision-making between inevitable evils that should never be pitted against one another. The bill enjoyed bipartisan support from both chambers, was signed by Governor Sisolak, and went into effect on January 1st, 2020. Then COVID-19 happened. It brought our entire state to its knees, crippled our economy, and brought record unemployment to this state. To put it plainly, everything changed when COVID ravaged our state. Everything. As we worked incessantly to be a resource to community members during the pandemic, we continued having socially distanced conversations about the needs of the families we work alongside. We learned the obvious things. We learned that people needed PPE, they needed paper products, they needed financial resources, and much, much more. But we also learned from the essential workers in our communities, those working in your local grocery stores, the local Walgreens, or the local corner store, that they had to go to work. SB 312 wouldn't apply to their employer. These same conversations also revealed some minor fixes that will strengthen the protections of Nevadan employees and employers. Current NRS can allow for employers to qualify for the statutory exemption by providing paid holidays to their employees. This doesn't seem right because we know that individuals or families don't plan when they get sick, and when they do, it definitely isn't based on the calendar of holiday time that an employee may get from their employer. The bill as amended addresses Section 1 that expressly states the following. In determining the amount of paid leave or paid time off provided to an employee pursuant to this section, Section 1, consider a state or federal holiday for which an employee is paid but not required to work. The intention of AB 303 and this modification is to clarify the measure that we passed in 2019. To put it plainly, we want to ensure that employers who do provide paid time off on state and federal holidays aren't able to use said time to exempt themselves from the current statutory requirements. We do not seek to penalize businesses. That is not the intention of this bill. They too are struggling in these uncertain times, and we know that. We're just seeking clarification for all parties involved. I think we can all agree that clarity is good for everyone. Workers will understand their rights. Employers will know their responsibilities as dictated by the legislation. Furthermore, despite the overwhelming sense of normality that we seem to be walking back into all throughout the country, we're still in the throes of a global pandemic. And we should insist that employees have access to paid sick time should they come down with COVID or any other illness. Allowing them said time helps suppress the virus and stop the spread. But it also gives families a little latitude to care for themselves without further harming their economic standing. In 2019, we all agreed that paid sick days are an important benefit that Nevada's workforce needs to have access to. Today, we have the opportunity to double down on this understanding, clarify the intent of the established NRS language, protect our employees and our employers. It's a win-win for all parties involved. I stand available to answer any questions that you may have or to further clarify the intent of this bill. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and we deeply appreciate Assemblywoman Sandra Summers Armstrong for helping us clarify this language in this law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savoie. Assemblymember Summers Armstrong, did you have another presenter with you?
No, ma'am. It's just Mr. Savoie and I. We want to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. We do have folks, I'm sure, on the call, and there are letters of support in Nellis, as well as I do know there is a letter in opposition, but the amendment is in Nellis, and we are ready for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Committee, I will now go to questions. I will check chat first to make sure. Committee members, any questions?
Madam Chair, I apologize. For some reason, I don't think I have an amendment. So I am curious as to the testimony we just got was in reference to the bill. So what actually is the amendment? And I will try to find it. I apologize. I did not know there was an amendment. I do not have it.
Madam Chair, may I please address Vice Chair Carlton?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vice Chair Carlton, our apologies. We were working diligently and we were not able to get it out to you in time. I will have my assistant send it to the entire committee within the next 3 minutes. She's loading it up right now. But I can speak it to you if you would not mind me just reading you the language that we received from LCB.
That would be
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So in section 1, paragraph 2, we'd added letter D, lowercase letter D. And it says after letter C, or, and then letter D, for the purpose of determining the amount of paid leave or paid time off provided to an employee pursuant to this section, consider a state or federal holiday for which an employee is paid but is not required to work to be paid leave or paid time off. In addition, ma'am, it brings back text that was struck in 8A and just leaves 8A whole as it was previously passed in SB 312. So that keeps it the same, and that's the only change that we are presenting to you today.
And Madam Chair, if I can correct the record, the Assemblywoman referenced paragraph 2. I know it all gets to running together, but it's actually paragraph 3, letter D, that the Assemblywoman read verbatim.
Okay, and members, I just got notice from our committee staff as well that the amendment has now been uploaded to Nellis. So I'm going to give everyone a couple minutes, couple minutes to go and grab that. I think it's helpful that we have it during this bill hearing. So I posted the links. I've sent everyone the link to the amendment in the chat, so you guys should be able to access it. And so members, if you want to grab that and take a look at it, I think.
Madam Chair, you also should have an email.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Okay, members, I will go to members first. Any questions on the amendment? I will start with Assembly Member Tolles.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Assemblymember Summers Armstrong, and welcome to the Commerce and Labor Committee. And I appreciate the background on the legislation, SB 312 from last session. I was part of that bipartisan support because there was so much collaboration between the sponsors and the business community to come up with that final compromise language. And so I did support that effort last session. I'm just wondering if there was that same collaboration and discussion with those same entities this time around on this new language. And then I have one more follow-up question after that, please, Chair.
Thank you. Madam Chair, may I speak directly to Assemblywoman Tolles?
Yes, Assembly Member, you can go directly to the members.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Tolles, thank you. And yes, we have had a number of meetings with representatives from the business community. We have tried to explain very clearly what the intent is, that it is not to change the basic premise from SB 312, but just to have clarifying language. I have not received any significant pushback. There is, as I said before, a letter that is in Nellis, but we have spoken to quite a few people. So we have not tried to do this in a silo. We've tried to be available and actively seeking input from others.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Madam Chair, if I may ask just a follow-up clarifying question on holidays and just how many holidays, what quantifies as a federal holiday? I know that we have so many, especially in this building. It seems like every day we're wearing a different color to celebrate something. So I guess my question is how many hours or days are considered federal holidays?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Tolles. So what we really want is, let me just stop. Mr. Savoie, would you mind answering that question, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. To you, Chair Howdeggy, or through you, Chair Howdeggy, to Assemblywoman
I can go directly to the members as well.
Oh, okay, sure. For the record, I'm Quentin Savoie. Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman. SB 312 stipulates that a Nevada employee is able to earn up to 5 days of paid sick time or paid time off in current NRS language. While I agree with your sentiment that it is definitely difficult to understand all of the holidays that we have, it seems like every month we have a holiday, Arbor Day, Flag Day, etc. Because the limit of 5 days as stipulated by SB 312 is what it is, it's fairly safe to assume that the federal holidays, there are at least 5 federal holidays that are universally accepted, right? So Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving, New Year's, Christmas. Most companies recognize Easter and so on. I would be concerned with the question that you posed if the threshold outlined in 312 was something like 15 days, because then there aren't probably 15 holidays that companies are able to observe. But because the limit in SB 312 is where it's at in terms of the 5 days, we can safely assert that there are 5 days of holidays that would be federally considered just broadly across the spectrum. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I'm still absorbing the amendment, so I'll keep reading and get back. But thank you.
Sure.
Assemblymember Dickman.
Thank you so much, Chair Huddy. I'm like Assemblywoman Toll, sort of trying to figure out, absorb the amendment. But so to help me understand, is this saying that, you know, there's a calculation for how much paid leave is earned, right? And so the paid holidays can't be used in that calculation, or would this require 5 extra days of paid leave regardless of what you earned?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Dickman. My name is Quentin Savoie for the record. Current NRS in Section 1, Subsection 8A, it states that an employer who pursuant to a contract, policy, collective bargaining agreement, or other agreement, that particular line outlines the exemptions. If you look at if you examine companies across Nevada that have a policy for paid holiday time, what we are saying and what we're intending with this bill is that companies that do provide paid holidays cannot use those paid holidays to meet the statutory exemption standard as outlined in subsection 8A.
Okay, that helps me understand it better. I was just wondering, so do hospitals and casinos, you know, the really large employers who, you know, a lot of their employees work on holidays, would this have a huge effect on them or a detrimental effect? Would it change anything for them? You know?
Thank you for the question. The current bill applies to corporations and businesses.
Would you just identify yourself for the record, please?
Oh, yes, sorry, Chair. Quentin Savoie for the record. Current NRS provides that companies that have 50 or more employees, they do have to abide by the current NRS standing. However, hospitals are around the clock. So I suspect that it would be up to the individual provision of the hospital. And I think that language is outlined based on an employer who pursuant to the policy of the hospital, they would determine if they provide those paid holidays. But we know hospitals aren't closed, right? So I suspect that hospital employees, my mother, which is one, she gets time and a half when she works on a holiday, or Christmas, which is considered a holiday. So we are just saying that if you are a company that the bill would apply to you, except that you do provide those paid holidays and you're off, that does not allow you to check the box for exemption for the NRS that was established in SB 12.
Okay, that helps a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Assemblymember Considine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So following up in the same line, I kind of wanted to ask about a hypothetical just so that I can solidify my understanding of the bill. So if my hypothetical is wrong, please fix it. But it's my understanding that, let's say I'm working at a business and I have accrued 2 PTO sick days. I've accrued 2 days off, and it's May, and the business is closed for Memorial Day. And then that business is also closed for the 4th of July. I believe those would be federal holidays. Under the current law, are you saying then that means that some businesses right now could say that those were your 2 days that you accrued, And what this bill is trying to do is say, no, those were paid holidays. I still have the 2 days that I accrued.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Considine. You are exactly correct. That is the intent, that the policy of the organization sets the ground floor. And if your organization has already established that it has those 2 days off as paid days for all their employees, the accrual does not apply to those days. Now, in the converse, if your employer said that we are open on the 4th of July and I want to go home and see my mom for the 4th of July and I've accrued 2 days, in order for me to be able to take the 4th of July off, I need to use one of my paid days because that is a work day. And so thank you for that. And I hope that helps clarify things a little bit.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Now I get it. Thank you.
Okay, members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we will move into the support testimony. Broadcasting, can you please check the telephone line for those wishing to testify in support, please?
Yes, Chair. To testify in support on AB 303, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 800, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and maybe.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Amy Koo, AMYKOO, and I'm the Deputy Political Director from 1APIA Nevada. We advocate on behalf of the growing Asian community here in Nevada, including on economic justice. I'm testifying on behalf of AB 303. In 2019, we advocated for the previous paid sick leave bill for businesses with more than 50 employees. However, we have seen in the last 2 years that this bill needs to be clarified when it comes to holiday time off and paid sick leave. We are still in the middle of a global pandemic, and all families deserve access to paid time off when sick without sacrificing their family's livelihood. AB 303 protects employees, businesses, and all patrons by providing Nevadans access to paid sick leave. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 161, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 161, you are unmuted. Please check that your phone is unmuted as well. And again, caller with the last 3 digits of 161, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You can press star 6 to unmute. Caller with the last 3 digits of 626, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Natalie Hernandez, and I am the co-director of organizing with the organization called Make the Road Nevada. We also worked very hard in 2019 to help pass SB 312. All of our members support it. We represent hundreds of members across the state of Nevada, and we are here in support of AB 303 because healthy employees make happy businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller.
You've recently joined the call and would like to testify in support on AB 303. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 169. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, thank you. My name is, for the record, my name is Jennifer Fleischman. That's JenniferFleischmann. I am the co-director of organizing with Make the Road Nevada. We organize in the immigrant and Latinx community, and our membership consists of workers who need to be able to take the time off to get better when they get sick. We know that businesses are stronger when their employees are healthy and that no one can plan when they get sick. And that is why I am calling in support of this Assembly Bill 303. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fleischman, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 887. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, yes, my name is Leo Murrieta, Leomurrieta. I'm the director of Make the Road Nevada. As my colleagues have mentioned, we work to improve the quality of life for working class immigrant and Latinx families across the state. And here in support of AB 303, after the work done during the 2019 legislative session, our members work tirelessly with partners, with legislators, and businesses all across the state to establish SB 312, which allowed workers the ability to take paid sick days to care for themselves and their families. I believe that AB 303 does an excellent job of clarifying the original intent of SB 312 and allows businesses and employees to be on the same page of what rights each have. I'm here in support of AB 303. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Murrieta, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 130. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christine Saunders. That's CHRISTINESAUNDERS. And I'm the Policy Director with the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, here in support of Assembly Bill 303. Last session, the Nevada Legislature took steps to improve access to paid sick days so that some workers don't have to choose between taking a child to the doctor or staying home to recover and a day's pay. In the midst of a global pandemic, the importance of staying home when you are sick is higher than ever. AB 303 is a clarifying measure that will protect Nevada's workforce and solidify the intention of the bill that passed in 2019. We urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Saunders, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 181. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Lalo Montoya, LALOMONTOYA. I am an organizer at Make the Road Nevada, also in support of AB 303, like my colleagues have spoken about. But I also just want to highlight that SB 312, what COVID-19 taught us is that it did not go far enough. And I believe that AB 303 is a good step to clarify the intent of why paid sick days keep our families safe, why paid sick days provide families with certainty that they will be safe not only at work but also at home from having to do all the work that they have to do. And that's why I urge you to please do what you can to preserve the spirit of what we are on the course to do, which is to keep Nevada's families safe while they're at work, and pass AB 303. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 161. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello. Hello, for the record, my name is Carla Ramirez, KARLA RAMIREZ. I am an organizer with Planned Parenthood and the community members. Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada is in favor of AB 303 because it solidifies the intention of SB 312, passed with bipartisan support in 2019. Allowing families to access sick days removes barriers to accessing quality health care. Black, Indigenous, and people of color, as well as low-income communities, have borne the brunt of the pandemic and should be guaranteed the time off to access the care that they need without worrying about paying rent or putting food on the table. We must protect the rights and health of our working families in Nevada now more than ever. Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada urges you to support AB 303 to ensure workers' rights are protected. Thank you again.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 237, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, members of the committee and chair. My name is Marlene Lockhart, Lockard, representing the Nevada Women's Lobby. We are in support of AB 303, but we do have to say we find it very disappointing that we need this bill. We felt it was clear, those of us that worked very hard on the paid leave bill from last session, that the intent was clear. And it's disappointing that employers continue to find ways and loopholes to not follow the intent of legislation, which was designed to help workers in meeting a myriad of issues with paid time off. So we support the bill, but we would hope that in the year 2021, we can work together with employers to come to an agreement that our workers need to be cared for and that there is a happy medium. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lockhart. Broadcasting, next caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 326, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. You are unmuted. Caller with the last three digits, 326.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon. I am Verania Rebolledo, for the record, VERANIA I'm an organizer at Make the Road Nevada. We are a local nonprofit organization here in Las Vegas that focuses in empowering Latinx communities and immigrant communities. And I'm here in support of AB 303. And as we mentioned, in 2019, SB 312 did not do enough in keeping workers safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. So please, I urge you, AB 303 is a good first step for employees and businesses to be safe and healthy at home and at their workplace. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller.
For those who recently joined the call, and if you would like to testify in support of AB 303, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much, Broadcasting. Okay, we will now move to hear testimony in opposition. Can we go to the telephone lines and start with those who wish to testify in opposition?
Yes, Chair, to testify in opposition on AB 303, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 124, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Paul Moratkin, MOR-AD-KHAN with the Vegas Chamber. We did reach out to the bill sponsor. We appreciated her time and being with us regarding AB 303. The Chamber is opposed to this bill as we did work extensively on Senate Bill 312 in 2019. We are concerned about any changes to Nevada's paid leave law at this time, because the impact it would have on employers as we attempt to recover, rebuild our economy, and bring employers back to work. Last session, we worked extensively with stakeholders to create a paid leave bill that we believe gives employees the flexibility that they wanted, creates a standard of 40 hours of paid leave in Nevada, and one that's easy to understand for both employees and employers. Nevada's paid leave program can be used for any reason by the employee with no restrictions, as part of the conversations that we had as drafted and adopted in SB 312. It is our opinion that end product is a model legislation for other states to look at as a fair and balanced system between employees and employers. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the vast majority of employers have done their best to adjust and adapt as much as possible to help support the needs of their employees during this public health crisis. We've all worked together to get through this pandemic together. As many of you do recall, now most businesses are currently operating at 50% per state directives to help slow the spread, and our members have been under restrictions or closures since March of 2020. I do want to clarify for the committee, in 2020, there are 10 federally recognized federal holidays per the federal government. Those include, of course, New Year's Day, MLK Day, President's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Columbus Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day. And then also in Nevada, of course, we recognize Nevada Day in October every year. We will review this amendment and follow up with the bill sponsor. But again, we do have concerns with the bill, and we will follow up with the bill sponsor after we follow up with our members. Thank you, Chair, for your time, and members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Marakin, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 139. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Howdegee and committee members. Misty Grimmer, Grimmer, with the Ferraro Group representing the Nevada Resort Association. I'm here today in opposition to AB 303. We too have just seen the amendment, so have not had the opportunity to respond to the sponsor and are not sure yet if this amendment changes our position. The language change in Section 8 was very problematic to our members, so setting that language back to the existing statute is appreciated. We will need some time, however, to review with our members the changes regarding holidays. While I understand that one legislature cannot tie the hands of the next legislature, the compromise that was reached in 2019 session on SB 312 was a very difficult compromise to come to. It took the work of many parties from all sides of the issue in many meetings to come to language that was eventually passed. I know all of us feels like 2020 lasted for 5 years, but in fact, the provisions of SB 312 from 2019 have actually only been in place for 1 year, so we were not pleased to see it being changed already. Once again, we will review with our members and get back to the sponsor and chair based on the changes in the amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Grimmer. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 851. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Howdegee, members of the committee. My name is Chase Whittemore, Whitten, as in Mary, ORE, with Argentum Partners, here today representing the Morello Gaming Group and the Las Vegas Sands Corporation. We too are in opposition to the bill as proposed, as introduced, and have not had a chance to review the proposed amendment. But as Ms. Grimmer stated, putting back that language into Section 8 does go a long way, but we still need some time to review the other changes, and we will certainly circle back with the members of the committee after that time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Whittemore, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 131. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Chair Howdegee, members of the committee, my name is Connor Kane, Connorcain.
and I'm testifying in opposition to AB 303 on behalf of HCA. We appreciate the sponsor's willingness to be available to work through stakeholder concerns and also Mr. Savoie's explanation of the proposed amendment today and how it would impact hospitals. That being said, we do, I believe, have some concerns still with the proposed amendment and would look forward to the opportunity to reaching out to the sponsor and working with her. We again thank her for her willingness to make time to work with stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 014, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. This is Russell Rowe, ROWE, of Rowe Law Group on behalf of Boyd Gaming Corporation. We echo the comments of the Nevada Resort Association, and we will review the proposed amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 114, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Amber Stidham, STIDHAM with the Henderson Chamber, and on behalf of more than 1,800 of our business members throughout Southern Nevada. We too, along with many of the stakeholders speaking today, worked really hard to create and come to a compromise on that paid leave bill, SB 312, during the 2019 session that we feel really does strongly support both employers and employees. We too would just need to review the amendment that was just posted during this meeting with our members. We share all of the same concerns that all of our business colleagues have mentioned just earlier in our initial review of the bill. We are open to working together with the bill sponsor on this.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Stidham. Broadcasting, next caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 781, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and maybe.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Nick Vanderpool, NICK-VANDERPOEL with Capital Partners here today on behalf of the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce. As noted, the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce, along with the Silver State Chamber of Commerce, submitted a letter of opposition. I think, as many of my colleagues have reiterated, to relive 2019 legislative session on Senate Bill 312, it was a compromise, and I think it was a very good model to put in place, and to undo that is unfortunate, but we believe we have a good system in place, and we share the remarks of our colleagues. Thank you.
Caller with the last three digits of 496, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Alexandria Dazlich, D-A-Z-L-I-C-H, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Nevada Restaurant Association. The Nevada Restaurant Association is in opposition of AB 303. We echo the concerns brought forth by our business colleagues and are opposed to the bill as it is currently written due to the increase in costs as well as liability it would have on our operators. However, we are looking forward to reviewing the amendments and working with the bill sponsor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
If you recently joined the call and would like to testify in opposition of AB 303, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you, Broadcasting. Can we check the telephone line for those wishing to testify in the neutral position?
Yes, Chair, to testify in neutral on AB 303, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 700, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Brian Walker with the Retail Association of Nevada, BRYANWACHTER. I'm not sure what just happened, but I hope you'll allow me. I was on the queue to testify in opposition, and I would just join my fellow business organizations and echo their comments. And I apologize for the technical difficulty, Madam Chair. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Wachter, and we'll make sure that your testimony is recorded under opposition. Broadcasting, could we check the telephone line for any callers wishing to testify in neutral?
Yes, sure. To testify in neutral on AB 303, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 638, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Alexis Motorex, Alexis Motarex, with the Nevada Chapter Associated General Contractors representing the commercial construction industry in northern Nevada. We share many of the same concerns articulated by those testifying in opposition, but at first blush, the bill as presented with the amendment removes our initial opposition, but we will need more time to review it in closer detail. We look forward to continuing the conversation with Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Motorex. Broadcasting, next caller.
Chair, there are no more callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you, Broadcasting. At this time, I would like to bring the Assembly member back up to give any closing remarks. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair Howdegee, and thank you, members of the Commerce and Labor Committee, for your time and attention to this issue. We have noted the concerns of all those who called in opposition and neutral, and will make a valiant effort to reach out to each and every one of them to discuss this. I would like to refer to a statement that was made by Paul, I don't want to say his last name incorrectly, of the Las Vegas Chamber, when he said that folks can use this leave that they acquire without restrictions. I would just like to reiterate the reason that this is being brought forward. If a person's a paid holiday is being used as meeting the requirement, that means that if that person is sick, they don't get to have a holiday, or they don't get to have time to use to care for themselves, that holiday would then be substituted for leave. And I don't believe that was the intent of this legislation, SB 312. We're just asking for clarification. We don't believe that it is a burden, but we're not closed-minded. So we will reach out to all those who called in to discuss this, make sure that we are clear that the amendment is clear to them, and that we hope that they can get on board and understand where we're coming from and look out for the best interest of their employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. With that, I will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 303. Next item on our agenda is Assembly Bill 312. I will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 312, which creates the Independent Contractor Benefits Program. I believe we have Assemblyman Wheeler here to present the bill. Welcome to the Committee on Commerce and Labor. Mr. Wheeler, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Howdegee and members of the committee. Thank you for having me today. For the record, I am Jim Wheeler, representing Assembly District 39 in Northern Nevada. I want to present for your consideration Assembly Bill 312, which creates the Independent Contractors Benefit Program. During the pandemic, I was contacted, as I'm sure we all were, by many, many people who were independent contractors who were having a lot of trouble getting their PUA benefits from the federal government. These were put in through DETR, and there was no system in place, and DETR was completely overwhelmed already with the regular unemployment. So it was very hard for these folks to get their benefits. So we were contacted daily. And I was then contacted by one of our constituents in Southern Nevada who said, why don't we put together a DETR type program for these PUA people so that the programs are in effect? And I thought that was a good idea. And at her request, I went ahead and put this bill in. While I did not make it a by request bill, because it was my last bill and I just got it in real quick. It was at the request of a lady you'll be hearing from in a moment here. But for some background information on this, For many people, the main reason to consider becoming an independent contractor is the freedom it presents. However, some drawbacks are no regular paychecks, no health insurance, no retirement package. And if you look at the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics report, 1/3 of the workers in the U.S. are classified as independent contractors. In Nevada, it's estimated a larger portion of contractors work in industries and occupations such as agriculture, construction, trade shows, trade events, rideshare, cab drivers, emergency room physicians, even financial advisors, just, to name a few. While it may seem safe to assume that a large percentage of our state's workforce earns a steady paycheck, we can't forget that a significant percentage has a grueling challenge to face. And it's particularly painful to consider this situation in the context of the coronavirus pandemic. So many individuals and families have been struggling to cover day-to-day living expenses and necessities. This is a regular struggle for independent contractors, and economic downturns in our state just make these circumstances doubly difficult. So Assembly Bill 312 creates the Independent Contractors Benefit Program. The primary source of this program the primary purpose of this program is to offer financial support to participating independent contractors who are out of work. And the following describes the process for a participating contractor in this benefit program. As an independent contractor submits an application for the Independent Contractors Benefit Program to the Unemployment Security Division of either the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, or to the Treasurer's Office. We have been in contact with both Dieter and the Treasurer in the last day, and we're actually looking at doing a conceptual amendment here, by the way, so everyone knows, to move this to the Treasurer's Office because they are already set up to do this. If you look, I believe on Nellis, there's a rather large fiscal note from Dieter on it. And this would cut that down, according to Treasurer Conine, probably to the $500,000 or $600,000 range from the $4 million range that it's at now. And because they already do programs like this. So given that, we will get that conceptual amendment out in the next day or two to you before this ever goes to work session. But we have to do some negotiations with the Treasurer's Office and with Dieter, both of whom, by the way, I believe are either on the phone or on the Zoom to answer any questions you may have. So this program, in the application, the contractor includes information about their income from the previous year and the amount they would like to contribute to the benefit program each month. The administrator of Dieter or the Treasurer's Office would determine if a contractor is approved to participate in the program. Participants must contribute to the program for at least 6 months and are not required to contribute in any month they are not receiving benefits. So the Independent Contractor Benefit Program provides an opportunity for contractors to set aside money, as a savings account, basically, or a rainy day fund that they can utilize for difficult times or to save as a retirement fund for later in life. Now, this program has been done, I believe, in New York, and I think they're looking at it in California as well. But I would like to turn the presentation over to the lady that came up with the idea for the bill, and that's Miss Brittany Sheehan, if she is ready.
Thank you, Assemblyman Wheeler. Am I on? Okay, hi. Good afternoon, Chairwoman and members of the committee, and thank you for hearing this bill today. My name is Brittany Sheehan, and I'm the Executive Director of Independent Labor Alliance, a nonprofit organization that advocates for the interests of independent contractors through policy and building partnerships. Independent contractors are a vital and vibrant part of our community. They are freelance journalists using First Amendment rights to freedom of the press and enhancing our democracy. They are our specialists, physical and other therapists, providing services to patients on their path to recovery. They are photographers, capturing special events such as weddings or documenting our history. They are our cosmetologists, keeping us all looking great. They are the entertainers in Las Vegas and in Reno. They are the nightlife promoters, helping bring in millions of dollars in nightly revenues to some of your favorite venues. They work in our trade shows and at our conventions. They are supporting industries to our tourism sector. They also support our civic sector as linguists and translators, giving equal access to society for those with a language barrier. They are creative service providers and skilled business professionals. A Forbes article published in 2020 reported studies found that about 30% of the workforce are independent contractors. An Intuit study in 2017 predicted 40% of the workforce would be working as independent contractors by 2020. If those estimates prove correct, then Nevada is home to about 300,000 independent contractors. However, over the last year, we had economic restrictions in our state that impacted independent contractors, as Dieter could very well tell you, as administrators of the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, or PUA program. Today, I'm presenting a bill that offers a state-level option to a series of actions taken at the state level. I do not feel it is wise or even appropriate to make such decisions over Nevada's economic opportunities and look to the federal government as the sole solver of the problem. The PUA program has an expiration date. As of now, it is set to expire in September. It is my understanding that the state emergency does not have a set expiration date and that this body has not undertaken discussions of any changes to the current status quo. Simply put, we are making decisions at a state level that adversely impact Nevadans, and we have not answered to Nevadans at the state level for how we solve those problems. Given those circumstances, I am offering legislation that will help Nevadans to help themselves in times of need. This bill allows independent contractors and freelancers to opt into a state fund and access those deposits when they have a loss of contract. Simply by having a state level program, we are encouraging community members to think about and prepare for unexpected interruptions to their regular course of business. As the bill reads, it is solely funded by the independent contractor or freelancer. It is designed so that these contributions occur monthly in the amount the independent contractor chooses. I encourage you guys to think about this program in terms of an access point, which I will speak on more in a moment. CBS News ran a headline in 2019 that 70% of Americans say they are struggling financially. This article goes on to say 7 in 10 Americans struggle with at least one aspect of financial stability, including saving money. Anyone can do a rudimentary internet search and find a litany of results on the topic of Americans struggling to put aside money for emergencies or for unforeseen circumstance. There's no argument that people do not need any help in the venue of savings. We should all know that they absolutely do. And by having a program that asks for monthly recurring contribution, we also encourage good fiscal habits for Nevadans. A common opposition argument we might hear today is that people could just go get a bank or savings account. While I acknowledge the logical thinking on this argument, and I'm open to discussions and good faith ideas, this program is not designed to operate as a bank account. Additionally, there can be barriers to having a bank account. In order to have a bank account, you would need an ID. Recently, we have heard from state officials that not everyone can access IDs. While we can all breathe a collective sigh of relief because that discussion is for another day, I urge you to bear that requisite in mind. I believe it would be a bipartisan agreement that when we shut down our state's DMVs for no less than 3 months, that was a barrier to Nevadans as a whole to access identification. The program I am proposing today relies on sufficient proof that the applicant received the majority of their income from independent contracting. One form of this proof would be a filed tax return. In order to file tax returns, the identification required is most often a social security number, something most people would receive at birth, or generally before starting to work in our society. That is not the only standard of proof, so applicants have the opportunity to demonstrate this proof in another way as well. These criteria mean that even in the circumstance the DMV is closed, people could still participate in the independent contractor benefit program. This is why I again ask you to look at this legislation as an access point for independent contractors. We all know that we have to start somewhere, be it for saving, finding a new opportunity, or in designing a new program. Another demographic important to all of us are women. Over the past year, women have turned to self-employment to balance the changes in education taking place in the home. We know many W-2 employee women left the workforce entirely to answer to those social challenges and take on more domestic roles. But that is not true for the independent contracting workforce because of the flexibility it provides. An IRS report in December shows women were the larger proportion of self-employment growth over men, it is worth noting and celebrating that their incomes are also trending greater growth over men. What the IRS found is that independent contractors are increasingly female with faster income growth. These are our caretakers who use ingenuity and self-determination to provide the environments needed and juggle their careers. These are women worth applauding in the face of uncertainty. They declared, "I may not know exactly what to do, but I'm going to figure it out." These are the single mothers in our community who wear all the hats at one time. These are exactly the people who can use the access point as a peace of mind and a leg up as they forge forward in creating futures for themselves and their loved ones. Now the big question, is this the best financial product on the market? No, plainly it is not. But it is the most accessible for many of these Nevadans. Because the independent contractor has the ability to end participation in the voluntary program at any time, if they find a financial product or service that better suits their needs, they can take their funds and go obtain this product or policy. The program can give Nevadan freelance and independent contractors the opportunity to put away and save for the premium needed to obtain those other options, even if it is a few hard-earned dollars at a time. Most importantly, they have funds set aside for times of need. This is a hand up, not a handout. Additionally, if the participant changes their occupation and has a 401k or another financial product made available to them, they can move their funds accordingly. It is very important to note that this legislation is presented and intended to be a voluntary program. From my purview as the director of a nonprofit for independent contractors, I know there are many unique aspects to their lifestyles and the way that they work. Some are college students who have few responsibilities outside of school and are just making a little extra on the side. Some are elderly who have fixed incomes and are doing minimal work just to cover extra expenses. Some are retirees whose specialty is needed or in demand, and they lend their knowledge to do just one project. Some independent contractors have mental health conditions that prevent them from working full-time or even part-time, so their schedules can be as sporadic as their health. Some independent contractors have impressive savings accounts. Just ask a doctor or a lawyer. Some independent contractors have no savings. Just listen to PUA applicants in dire need to have their claims processed. There is no one size fits all. It would be narrow-sighted to make this program mandatory instead of voluntary because there are so many situations and people that won't fit inside that box. If this bill is perverted from its original intention to function as a voluntary program, I will caution you that you will get calls from lawyers and real estate professionals asking, "Are you kidding me? I don't need this and my money grows better elsewhere." If we go down the path of picking and choosing who needs this and who does not on their behalf, we are applying arbitrary criteria and creating an entry burden into industry. There are bills in the legislature right now to reduce entry point requirements to help Nevadans who lost work over the last year and are reinventing themselves in a new industry. We do not wish to move in the opposite direction. We aim to bring accessibility to the Nevadans who want to benefit from this program without casting a dragnet that captures people that shouldn't be there and people that you would certainly hear from. I ask that you acknowledge that in making this a compulsory program, it would tip the scale in a way that we are harming more people than we are helping. And because of our biannual legislature, we will not be able to change course, exempt, second guess, or help anyone who is adversely impacted. We simply don't have time to make mistakes by choosing what is best for hundreds of separate industries in Nevada. So I do ask that you all understand the occupational diversity that we are talking about in this context and realize truly one size does not fit all. Another upside to this program is that it is not rife for abuse or fraud because it is their own money that they are contributing. There is nothing prohibitive. If the state or even a philanthropist wants, they can give to the fund in a way to support Nevadans who are seeking to do the best they can by utilizing the access point. I do not believe the state nor the taxpayers can take on a replica of the PUA program. We simply don't have the hundreds of millions or billions in the budget it would take, and Dieter has definitely struggled to administer such a program. So in light of no alternatives being offered, I contend with the impacts those impacts to independent contractors. I propose what we can do this session is help Nevadans who would benefit by providing this access point, encouraging healthy habits, and making considerations for their futures and the future of the state. The question we are asking today is, do you believe in Nevadans? Do you believe in empowerment? Do you believe in women entrepreneurs? Do you believe in Black entrepreneurship? Do you believe in the determination of the Latino community? Do you believe in those with social limitations or other barriers? When you vote yes on this bill, you're voting yes for inclusion, yes for accessibility. You're voting yes for women, for single mothers, for those with mental, developmental, or health limitations. You're voting yes for guidance, yes for preparation, and yes for healthy habits, and yes for empowerment. To those of you who might think it is not enough, I assure you that inaction is not enough. Doing nothing at all is not enough. Ignoring all of the implications of the last year is certainly not enough. And because Las Vegas is increasingly a hockey fan base, to quote the great Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. Independent contracting is sometimes referred to as non-traditional work. With that in mind, I am proposing a non-traditional solution to a unique problem. Members of the committee, I ask that you enthusiastically support this program of self-help to the self-employed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sheehan, and thank you, Assemblymember Wheeler, for the presentation. Assemblymember Wheeler, are we ready to go to questions?
We are ready to go to questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, members, I am going to go to chat, so if you have questions, please message me there.
Okay, no questions. Let's go.
We are going to start questions with our Vice Chair, Carlton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly what type of an account we want to set up. So Assemblyman Wheeler, your proposal is along the lines of what's in Section 19, that this would be in the state treasury and be managed by the treasurer. Is that basically where you're headed?
Originally, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I go directly to the member?
Yes, please. Okay,
thank you. Thank you, Assemblyman Carlton. Originally, the idea here was to go through Dieter and have Dieter set up the whole thing. But after the bill came out, discussions with Dieter and with the treasurer's office over the last day, we felt that it would probably be better to be deposited in the treasurer's office, but who actually administers it is something we want to fix in the conceptual amendment, whether that will be the treasurer's office or Dieter. Obviously, this particular bill, if it passes out of committee and on to the floor, would go to the Ways and Means Committee, your committee, and we will have everything done in the next day or so. So we'll have absolute clarity on that. But right now, I think I'm kind of leaning toward the treasurer's office since they do this type of thing all the time.
Okay, and if I may ask a couple of follow-up questions, Madam Chair, and that way I can kind of get an idea where we're going. So it is not your intention to ask the state for matching funds. This will be individual accounts funded by the contractor.
That's correct. As Ms. Sheehan said, the state really can't afford that right now. And, who knows, maybe someone will want to revisit it later, but I doubt it. The idea of being an independent contractor is just that, being independent. So this can be used for unemployment type stuff. The difference is going to be they're going to get a bill every month, or at least a notice every month saying, you need to contribute to this, or it could be done through automatic deposit, et cetera. And if they don't use it, if they don't want it, they could use it for their retirement.
Okay, so I guess my next question would be, would the independent contractors be picking up the cost of the treasurer's office doing this, or would you expect the state to pick up the cost for it? Because there will be a cost.
Yes, there will be a cost, and that's why there was a fiscal note on it, of course. But we're trying to bring that fiscal note down, and it would be something that the state would actually get started with. There could be a small fee, I guess, for the independent contractor, but I think when we look back at the pandemic and what happened to these people and how long they had to wait, to get some of their stuff, to get the program going, et cetera, we need to have something out there where we have a program for these people if something happens again. And so either way, whether they pay for it themselves or the state does, I think we have to have a program like this set up, ready to go. Hopefully we'll never have any, type of emergency like we had last time, but, or still going through. But we need to have a program set up in case that happens.
May I make a clarification? Chairwoman?
Yes, please, Ms. Sheehan.
There's language in the bill that permits the state to invest the fund, which is why it's a dollar in and dollar out program for the independent contractors. So we do hope that with interest accrued, that it would offset some of those operational costs. Thank you.
And that was leading me to my next question is so you would actually be okay with the state making money off of independent contractors' money? I'm not sure the state is allowed to do that off of private citizens' money. I think we would have to talk to legal about that. And I think you're being very gracious to offer that. Believe me, we'll take the money. But I'm just not sure if the state wants to get into the business of making money off of independent contractors' money. So I think we would have to take a real good look at that, Mr. Wheeler.
If I'm reading it right, Assemblywoman, in Section 19, subsection 2, I believe it is. Yeah, the administrator is a contribution by participant. This actually wouldn't be paying the state anything. If the state actually makes interest on it, which would be a small amount of interest because it would have to be such a safe fund, then that would go back into the account.
Okay, so I guess I'm getting a little bit of mixed messages here, but when we see the conceptual amendment, we'll have a better idea. And thank you so much for looking at amending your bill so that it doesn't cost the state $4.5 million. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Here of Ways and Means out.
Yeah, I didn't want it to go up to your committee and me have to crawl it.
Okay, Assemblymember Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler and Mrs. Sheehan for bringing this bill present. We do know we had a lot of constituents talk about PUA, and it is something that needs to be reckoned with. But my question is, in here it says that the person can contribute. But what happens if they just disappear? What's going to happen with the funds that are in the account? Do they get paid out at a certain time if they don't continue contributing? And maybe I missed it somewhere, but I was trying to find it. If, for example, if I stop paying and then does the treasurer going to send my money back to me, or if I move, or what happens then?
The way I understand it, Assemblywoman, if once the money is in the account.
For the record, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, not used to doing that on the other side of the dais. Clear for the record. Again, Assemblywoman, the way I understand it, the contractor can take that money out at any time because it's really their money. So I kind of doubt that anyone would say, well, I paid into it for 2 years and I'm leaving. If that were to happen, then, and I believe there is someone on the line from the treasurer's office. So if that were to happen, I think they could answer this probably better than I even. I would assume it would go into unclaimed property, but that's just an assumption on my part. But it would not revert back to the state, no.
Follow up, please.
Yes, Assemblymember Duran. And Assemblymember Duran, I do believe we have someone from the treasurers. I know they had signed in, but I don't see them on. I thought we had someone to help answer your question, Assemblymember, but they might be on the telephone line. And if they are, maybe they can help answer your question, Assemblymember Duran, in the testimony portion.
Okay, and that's what I was going to say. Would it revert back to the unclaimed funds that Treasurer Zach Conine puts out at the once a year or every couple of years, that unclaimed property? I was just thinking about that because a lot of our people are transit and they leave town in a hurry and they just space it out. That's my only concern. Thank you.
Assemblyman Wheeler, for the record. Assemblywoman, I'm absolutely not sure on that, but the Treasurer's Office will be able to tell you that. The intent is to make every effort to make sure that this person gets his money back.
Thank you.
Okay, and Assembly members, any other questions? Assemblymember Kasama?
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Sheehan, at the beginning of your presentation, you talked about how difficult it is for independent contractors to put money aside. And so this program is a voluntary program. So I'm just wondering what would be the incentive for them to use this program versus their own private accounts. And secondly, I believe you mentioned there was one other state that had implemented this program. And how long has that program been in existence, and what is the success? Are people using it?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Kasama. Brittany Sheehan for the record. The incentive, this is why I'm calling it a access point. The incentive is to help them put something aside, because it's not an independent contractor problem, but it's an American problem that we struggle to have what we need in times of need and in terms of savings for emergencies. And because independent contractors are operating on their own, this is a way to help encourage those habits. So either if you cannot access a bank account, or if you're a person who struggles with maintaining a bank account, such as you get a high summer utility bill and then it wipes out all of your savings, this is a separate place to put it, just like someone with traditional employment would have a separate benefit that isn't affected by their utility bill or other things. So I do realize that if there is a more beneficial financial product or policy on the market, that those people would go and then access that. But this is a stepping place for them to start saving and thinking about what they need to prepare for these types of times. And I believe you had a second question about other states. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, the other states.
There's several different models in other states, and I believe it was Assemblyman Wheeler who actually mentioned the other states. I am familiar with an opt-in program for disability, and that includes paid family leave in California. But I will tell you that their budget and some of the things they do don't quite look like Nevada's. So not every state model, is reciprocal for how our state functions. And I'll turn it over to Assemblyman Wheeler to answer that.
Before you do that, could I just, so you're thinking that by the state mailing them a bill or an invoice, that will be more incentive for them to contribute to the fund. Is that kind of where you're coming from? It's a reminder to them to contribute money if the state sends them a bill.
Yes, and I don't look at it as a bill as much as an investment or a savings, because this is your money. You're not paying it out necessarily. But what it does is it teaches people who are self-employed and taking on the responsibility of going into business for themselves to think about putting money aside, to think about what financial products they can have. So it is about accessibility, because not everyone can access these things, and it is about encouraging healthy habits for Nevadans who don't have these safety nets. And frankly, today we can't offer them those safety nets.
And then I'm going to jump in, Assemblymember Kasama, because I believe the two states, for the first part of your question, so Assemblywoman Wheeler, if you could, I believe the two states you mentioned were California and New York who had set these up, and I had the same question. Can you speak to what their success rate is? How many independent contractors they have enrolled?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assemblyman Wheeler for the record. I know that New York has set up, but it is it is taxpayer funded in New York, and you can start a new business. For instance, if you go on unemployment in New York, you can start a new business and continue on with your unemployment. But also, from what I understand, private contractors, and it's a fairly new program. When I mentioned California, I believe I said that they were starting it. So it looks like, I think it's going through the legislative process over there. So I don't think there's any numbers available on it yet. So really Nevada would be kind of the cutting edge of this.
Okay, so it hasn't passed in California yet?
As far as I know, ma'am, no. I'm absolutely not 100% sure.
And Mr. Wheeler, I'll just remind you to identify yourself for the record when speaking. And Assemblymember Kasama, I'm sorry I jumped in because I had a similar question. Did you have any other questions?
No, that's all good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we will go to Assemblymember Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Assemblyman Wheeler and Ms. Sheehan for bringing this idea. So I think we've established like an independent contractor, you can show that through a tax return, or I'm assuming like somebody that gets 1099s. We've talked about, so I have two different questions. So first of all about the contributions and then about the payouts. So a person would be required to pay every month to this account. So except in months that they're receiving a benefit. So what happens if they just stop paying? Then what happens to the account? Like, is the agreement canceled? What happens in that situation?
Assemblyman Wheeler for the record. Ms. Sheehan, do you want to take that, or would you like me to?
Either way.
Yeah, I'll take it then.
Go ahead.
Assemblyman Jim Wheeler for the record. Thanks for the question, Assemblywoman. The idea here is not to penalize someone for not paying in. If they don't pay in, say they pay in for 6 months in a row and then they miss for 2 months, they can start paying again. This is their account. This is their money, and we should never, we're not going to penalize someone for not being able to pay 1 month or the next month. As you know, a gig driver, for instance, just to pull one out of the air, may not work for a month. May not make enough money to put it in for a month. So it's not a bill, and whatever they're going to receive every month, I think it needs to be set up by regulation, not in the bill, but by regulation, so that it's a little bit easier changeable. And that process needs to be set up by the department that that actually controls this. So whether that be the treasurer's office or DEER, that would be a process that they set up.
Okay, thank you. And one follow-up, Chair, is that okay?
Follow up, Assemblymember Hardy.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Melissa Hardy. So now turning to the payout side. So is it going to be like they get a weekly amount, kind of depending on, what they made over a year? Is it broken down, or can they just get a lump sum? Or any thoughts to how they would receive the money?
Yeah, Assemblyman Wheeler for the record. That's, again, something that should be set up, we believe, in regulation by the controlling authority in conjunction with the contractor. Because, once again, this is not state money. This is their money. So I think that they should be able to fill out a form saying how much of that they want over what period of time. So, but I would assume it would be a monthly check, not a weekly check.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions before I go to other members. Did you guys discuss, or did you think about whether this was going to be pre-tax money or post-tax money? I'm still having trouble wrapping my head around why someone would want to invest their money into this program and let the state own interest for this program when independent contractors already have other routes they can take, like they can set up individual 401ks, or they can also set up their own type of IRAs, which would then actually earn themselves interest and then also have tax advantages. And those also have the ability for people to make early withdrawals in extreme hardship emergencies as well, which would include being laid off. So what's the advantage going this way for an independent contractor instead of going like a SEP IRA or individual 401k that would, again, earn interest for themselves? I mean, I would think as an independent contractor, I would want to keep interest in my account versus somebody else's account.
Thank you. Ms. Sheehan, you want to take that?
Yes, thank you for the question, Chairwoman. Again, this is an access point, and I did say in the presentation, of course, this is not the best financial product on the market, but it might be the most accessible for some people. So I do agree that if people have policies or financial products available to them that better suit them, then it is in everyone in society's interest that they go and obtain those things. But this is a route to help them see those needs and to save to afford a premium or to afford to get one of these products. So of course, you know, if you're a doctor, this isn't where you're going to put your money. But if you are a single mom who has trouble putting something aside and just wants a starting place for emergency situations and just learned over that last year that you're underprepared for these things, this is a way that we can help Nevadans start. And that's what I'm asking for today. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Ms. Sheehan. And I would just remind you to identify yourself for the record to our committee secretaries. It'll help them with their minutes. And again, it's just, as a follow-up to my question, I think you're going to have the same difficulties getting people to invest into a state-run, account if we're having difficulties getting them to invest in an individual 401k or SEP IRA. Again, those do come with the tax advantages. So will this money be pre-tax or post, that they are contributing? Will there be a tax advantage for them? And then how do you plan on getting the word out to independent contractors? Where would the dollars for that campaign come from?
Sheehan, you want to take that, or would you like me to?
You can take it, Assemblyman Wheeler.
Thank you. The way I understand that, Assemblyman Wheeler for the record. The way I understand this, Madam Chair, for the foreseeable future, at least, this would be post-tax dollars because that's what you're paying in. So what comes out would also be post-tax dollars, but not be taxable. But much like taking it out of a savings account, I guess. So I understand what you're saying. As far as notification for this, I think that is something that we would have to actually put in regulation in the next interim to see what works, what doesn't work, let people know what's available to them.
Thank you. And then I'm going to go to Assemblymember O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. You asked one of my questions on taxes. So, and I'm not sure if Ms. Sheehan or maybe legal could answer my other question. Would the money be subject to any garnishment in the sense of child support payments in the account or at time of payout?
Brittany Sheehan, for the record, thank you for the question, Assemblyman O'Neill. It should not be, and this is generally not how we would expect a benefit for someone who needs it during a time of unemployment. They don't garnish your unemployment, or we just heard a bill about sick days. So these things that traditional employees get shouldn't be taken from them if they need them in a time of emergency. So if there is a lien or something at the time that you file your income tax, a lot of times the states will put that on your income tax return. I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, Assemblyman. Member Wheeler.
Assemblyman Wheeler, for the record, I would actually like to ask legal that because in a different committee that I'm on, we just heard a bill that would make gambling winnings eligible for child support. So that's one I'd love to hear from legal on, and I will get a hold of them, and I will let you know, Assemblyman O'Neill.
Members, any other questions? I'm going to do quick check. Okay, seeing none, I am going to move.
Madam Chair, if I may, there was one thing that didn't get addressed.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. And I guess I'm a little confused. I heard something earlier about the ID, about not having ID. So I know in this building, we have had a lot of conversations about people having to have ID to do certain things. So what is the thought process behind the statement about the ID and being able to have this account? It went by pretty quick, so I just wanted to understand.
Brittany Sheehan for the record. Thank you. I was trying to demonstrate to the committee why a bank account might not be accessible to everybody, even though that is the logical first thought. Oh, you put savings in the bank account, right? So an ID is required for a bank account. For this program, we're looking at a proof that you made most of the majority of your income from independent contracting. So most of the time that would be federal taxes filed with 1099, but that's not the only burden of proof. So the applicants in this program have the opportunity to use another satisfactory way to show this. So if perhaps someone can't get an ID, and maybe that reason is because the DMV is literally closed, then they can still participate in this program, and that's why I brought it up. Thank you for your question.
Okay, that's not quite where I was going, but thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the question, Vice Chair Carlton. Okay, members, doing one last check before I go into testimony. Any questions for our presenters? Okay, with that, I will move us into testimony and support. Broadcasting, could we please check the telephone line for anyone wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 312?
Yes, Chair, to testify in support on AB 312, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Broadcasting, is there anyone in the queue for support?
Oops, apologies. My microphone was muted. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Broadcasting?
Yes, Chair, are you able to hear me? There are no callers in support at this time.
Chair, this is Michael
Broadcasting, can you hear me?
Chair, this is Michael from Broadcast. Cindy on the PC call said there are no callers in support at this time.
Okay, it looks like I might be having trouble with my speaker. 1 second. Hi, Broadcasting. Can we try this one?
Testing, are you able to hear me, Chair? Cindy in public comment.
Okay, perfect. I'm so sorry. My speakers must have gone out and they just came back in. I'm so sorry. So I'm not sure if we had started in the support already because I couldn't hear anything. So did we have anyone in queue to testify in support?
We did not, but I can do another call, Chair, if you'd like me to make sure.
No, it's okay. We can, if you'd like to do another check just to see if there is anyone.
Okay, I will go ahead and do that. To testify in support on AB 312, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to testify in support on AB 312, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 052, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 052, please press *6 to unmute.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Melissa Blundo, Melissa Blundo, and I am speaking in favor of this bill. I think due to what we saw go on with the multiple independent contractors in our state who waited from March till November or are still waiting to receive PUA, I believe this is a way to help them As Brittany spoke about, have an access point to start saving some money or putting something away so that if we ever come into a situation like we did again and Dieter isn't ready, we can't always rely on the federal government to have the money. Look at the debt that we're going into as a country. I think it's a great way for us to help a lot of people in our state who are independent contractors and will always be that way to be able to access money to help them in times of need. I encourage you guys to really look at this from the lenses of an independent contractor and not so much somebody who's always been employed through another company or through government, and try and see things that way. They're not always informed on the different financial products that are out there for them, but I believe that through Independent Alliance Labor that they could get this out there to them, and it's something that you're going to see independent contractors really take a hold of more than what they would a traditional bank savings account or, like somebody said, a 401k or an IRA. I certainly just truly encourage you to take a look at this and move forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller.
If you recently joined the call and would like to testify in support on AB 312, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 643, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 643, please press star 6 to unmute.
Thank you, Chairwoman, through you. Love to testify here in support of AB 312. My name is Wiz Rizard. That's spelled Wizrouzard. I'm the Director of Grassroots Operations here in the state of Nevada for Americans for Prosperity. Americans for Prosperity activists in Nevada support flexible work arrangements, including independent contracting, which empower tens of millions of Americans to earn income and fulfilling careers while meeting the demands of their busy personal and family schedules. Such flexibility has been increasingly important for families in the 21st century in general, but has become even more critical during the COVID-19 pandemic that has led to employment, health, and schooling disruptions in addition to other new challenges. As AFP seeks to expand opportunities for flexible work, we applaud the intent of this legislation to create a new voluntary benefit system for contractors to draw from when they have disruptions of income. Independent contractors who largely are outside of traditional unemployment compensations, aside from temporary federal measures, such as during the pandemic, which we all saw, would definitely benefit from increased access to voluntary opportunities. In fact, the voluntary nature of such program is key to preserving independent work, as contractors have many unique preferences and circumstances to consider. Some prefer higher direct pay over more benefits, or perhaps already have the benefits that they seek through spouses or private options. As we continue to explore the most effective policies for independent contractors and the broader freelancer community, we urge you all to consider measures that better protect the independent status workers, that workers seek, which is aided by voluntary benefits that preserve the choice of workers and arrange the work best for them. And AB 3112 is the right step in that direction. And I applaud Brittany on her great presentation. And thank you, Madam Chair, for this opportunity to speak.
For your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and move into those for the opposition part of the hearing. Can we check the telephone line for those wishing to testify in opposition?
Yes, Chair, to testify in opposition on AB 312, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. And again, if you would like to testify in opposition on AB 312, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and check the telephone line for those wishing to testify in the neutral position.
Yes, Chair, to testify in neutral on AB 312, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 387, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Committee, good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Thank you very much for letting us talk. For the record, my name is Christopher Sewell. I'm COO and Legislative Liaison for Dieter. As Assemblyman Wheeler has spoken to earlier, we are working with him and the Treasurer's Office on the best way to move forward in reducing that fiscal note that we had to place on this bill. And for the reason for that fiscal note, just so it is out there and on the record, is the unemployment insurance program and the PUA program are federally funded programs and federally mandated programs. This program would be a state program, and therefore we cannot use our resources that normally would do UI and PUA to put together this program and maintain this program, and that's one of the reasons why it's such a large fiscal note. So we are working with Assemblyman Wheeler and getting through and getting the best program for these individuals and these Nevadans so that we can move forward and help them in the next issue. And hopefully it's never another pandemic. But we are available for questions. I do have our senior attorney here, Troy Jordan, and we are available for questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Director Reynolds? Thank you for your testimony, Director Reynolds. Broadcasting, next caller in neutral, please.
Chair, there are no more callers in neutral at this time.
Okay. I believe I had the treasurer signed into neutral. Treasurer Conine, are you on the Zoom? I don't see you. Okay, and broadcasting, you said there were no other callers, correct, in neutral?
Correct. I could do another call if you'd like me to, just to do a double sweep.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, will do. To testify in neutral on AB 312, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 101, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, Chair. Sorry about the technical difficulties here. This is Treasurer Zach Conine. That's ZACHCONINE. I just wanted to call in, testify neutral. Assemblyman Wheeler brought this to our attention yesterday, and we do some of these accounts in things like ABLE and the rest. So we wanted to take a look and see if there was a way to do so more cheaply. Also heard some interesting things in the hearing and would want to make sure, just from a regulatory perspective, we are going to be able to service accounts like this. But we are going to sharpen our pencils, and now that we've learned a little bit more, see if there could be a solution here. But we'll work with Dieter and the Assemblyman and anyone else to try and figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Conine. Broadcasting, are there any other callers on the line?
There are no more callers in neutral at this time.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to bring Assemblymember Wheeler back to make any closing remarks he'd like.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assemblyman Jim Wheeler for the record. I just wanted to thank Mr. Sewell and Treasurer Conine for getting on and letting us know that they're willing to work with us. And I just want to say that independent contracting, serves as a mean for workers to move in and out of the workforce. And it's a lot of the people who start their own businesses and grow into massive businesses. So let's do whatever we can to help them. Anyone having any ideas on this, please get a hold of me. I'd love to see something so that we can keep these people in the independent workforce, the next time that something happens. I thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember Wheeler, and thank you, Ms. Sheehan, for being here and presenting Assembly Bill 312. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 312. Members, this brings us to our last bill hearing for the afternoon version of Commerce and Labor. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 246. We have our very own Assembly Member Edgar Flores here to present the bill. Members, I do want to know that there was a conceptual amendment that was recently uploaded to Nella's. I have had our committee manager share it with everyone so that we can easily access it while we follow along during the bill presentation. Assembly Member Flores, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and esteemed colleagues of the Commerce and Labor Committee. I am Assemblyman Edgar Flores for the record, proudly representing Assembly District 28, and I am here to present Assembly Bill 246. If I may offer a quick roadmap as how I intend for the conversation to move forward for the sake of clarity, as I know there was a last-minute amendment that came in. I will be referring every time I refer to a section, a page number, and or a line number, I will be referring to the original text of the bill as presented originally. I've only provided the conceptual amendment so that you may have notes for the future and so that you can follow along with some of the changes that I intend to make. I first wanted to offer a quick synopsis of where this bill originated, and then I'd like to then preemptively explain how I think this bill addresses those concerns. I will then walk you through the bill and the conceptual amendment, and then lastly, open it up for questions. So Assembly Bill 246 for me is a notice bill for employees. We all know that we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and while we are hopeful that things are improving now that we have a vaccination available, and that we are slightly moving towards a direction of reopening, there is no question that we're still in the middle of a pandemic. And consistently throughout the pandemic, we've had everybody thanking our essential workers. I myself, owning a small business, have had the obligation to look at 12 to 14 employees in the eye and try to figure out whether or not we could keep our doors open, and or if we needed to mitigate the situation by implementing some part-time program or whatever we needed to do. So by no means am I unsympathetic to how employers have stepped up. I know employers have done numerous things throughout the pandemic, and I think Nevadans should be very proud of the type of employer we have here. We've seen folk delivering food. We saw folk donating things. We saw folk who didn't have their employees coming in. Employers were still paying them. We saw so many different things where our employers were stepping up. And so when I started thinking about this particular bill, the question to me was, what more could we do to help our employees that is not overly burdensome on employers? And so I reached out to friends, colleagues, other law offices, folk that own car dealerships, friends of mine that own dental offices. I reached out to everybody I knew that was a small business owner. And I asked them, what happens when you find out that somebody in your office may have potentially been exposed to COVID-19? And through dialogue, I realized that most of us, if not all of us, because I haven't heard of somebody that I know personally who isn't doing this, is that we immediately go into reactive mode, and where you know that somebody may have potentially been exposed, you notify the employee as soon as possible. And it's very much a reaction to a situation where we unfortunately can't always prevent. So that's what this bill's about. This bill's about what happens when an employee notifies an employer that she or he has potentially been exposed or has COVID-19 and that they've been around other employees. What then does the employer do? That's the first thing this bill does. The second thing is putting in place a mitigation plan, a mitigation program specifically to ensure that once we know somebody has unfortunately tested positive for COVID-19, they've notified the employer, the employer has notified employees, what are we doing now after that? Now, I want to make it abundantly clear, this bill does not violate HIPAA because this bill does not require an employer at any time to tell an employee who may have tested positive. I also want to preemptively tell you that this bill does not impose, in my opinion, an overly burdensome requirement on employers, because my understanding is most good actors are already doing this. But the reason we see it necessary is because anecdotally, many industries, and you'll hear from them today, you'll hear from employees who talk about knowing or finding out weeks later that they were working side by side with somebody who had tested positive for COVID-19, notified the employer, and the employer still told them to continue working and never took any type of preventative measures to notify the individuals working within the immediate proximity of that individual, that particular employee, or not that employee, but that somebody there may have been potentially been exposed. You'll hear about individuals who there was just a general broad statement made and maybe not specified to particular individuals where there are language barriers, right? There may be a work site where everybody speaks a specific language and everything is communicated in a specific language, but when it came to the notice of them potentially having been exposed to COVID-19, it was said in English or a language that they didn't necessarily understand. And then lastly, I want to say that in walking you through the bill, there's going to be particular industries that are going to be completely exempt or are excluded purposefully in this bill. And I'll explain in detail as to that. So now I'm going to walk you through Assembly Bill 246. I am now looking at sections 2, 3, and 4. So the first thing I want to say here in the conceptual amendment that I provided to you, I am making it abundantly clear that this bill shall not apply. So sections 2 through 12 shall not apply to those covered by the Ryan White Act of 2009. That's federal law that specifically addresses the requirements of notification for medical facilities. Federal law goes above and beyond this bill. It's much more stringent. So there are already many requirements that medical facilities have to abide by. And I don't want to muddy the water with this bill and imposing anything that is less than what the federal law already requires. So medical facilities, we're talking about hospitals, et cetera, they're exempt. The second part of the exempt or the caveat that we're carving out are specifically everything captured under public accommodation facility as defined by Nevada Revised Statute 447.320. If you see section 8 of this of the bill, and that's in page 3, line 37, it says section 8, the provisions of section 2 to 12 inclusive of this act do not apply to a public accommodation facility. I wanted to define a public accommodation facility. NRS 447.320 defines it as a hotel and casino, resort, hotel, motel, hostel, bed, breakfast facility, or other facility offering rooms or areas to the public for monetary compensation or other financial considerations on an hourly, daily, or weekly basis. The reason I'm carving them out as well is because in NRS 447.345, there are already very stringent mitigation and notification requirements for all public accommodation facilities that go beyond what this bill does. So again, they're completely exempt. They're not being captured in any way by this bill. And I just wanted to make that abundantly clear. Now, section 3 tries to define what COVID-19 means. And we've seen similar discussions as to COVID-19 and reference in other statutes. Particularly, you may recall Senate Bill 4 of the 32nd special that we had, where we had a very similar definition there. Section 4, just to not muddy the waters, says an independent contractor and references to where it's already defined in statute under NRS 617.120. Section 5 talks about what a potential exposure to COVID-19 means. And it talks about when a person interacts with an employer, employee, principal contractor, subcontractor, independent contractor, and that person has been diagnosed with COVID-19 or is diagnosed with COVID-19, but not more than 10 days. Right now, as the bill reads on line 22, it says 14 days. I am amending that to read 10 days. And the reason we're making that amendment is that we've seen new federal guidelines that talk about 10 days. So we just want to mirror what we're getting from our federal counterpart of workers. So to ensure that we have transparency and that we're not, and that we're mimicking one each other. And then beyond that, it goes into section C, which is experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and has not yet received a positive or negative diagnosis or died due to COVID-19. So that specifically talks about when somebody may have potentially been exposed to COVID-19, what that means. I want to go into section 9. And section 9 works in tangent with specifically section 5. And section 9, I am amending it to include the language within 6 feet of such a potential exposure to COVID-19. So if you read section 9 as it should, it would read as follows. If an employer is informed of a potential exposure to COVID-19, the employer shall notify in writing each employee who was within 6 feet of such a potential exposure to COVID-19 on the premises or work site of an employer. Now, I want to also make a correction here. We are using, in the original bill of section 9, I used the word premises or work site, but that's not defined. So to bring clarity and to bring an actual definition, I am amending that particular language. And instead of using premises or work site, I'm using place or employment as defined by NRS 618.155. And again, this is just a swap. When we use the phrasing premises and work site, we had meant the same thing as place of employment, but because place of employment is already defined, we're simply substituting that phrasing. And of the employer and each principal contractor, subcontractor, independent contractor, that is a contractor within the employer who has within 6 feet of such a potential exposure to COVID-19 again, we're using the place of employment of the employer or has an employee who were within 6 feet of such a potential exposure, et cetera. What we're doing here is we want to make sure that anytime somebody has been exposed to COVID-19, right, the potential exposure of COVID-19, we want to make sure that we're only triggering the notification requirement if you were within 6 feet. And the logic behind that is maybe I own 5 different buildings and I have over 100 employees in each one. If a particular employee in a particular section of building A were to be potentially exposed, I don't want the employer to be required to have to notify everyone in that building and then building B and then building C. We just want to make sure that we're narrowly tailoring the language of having to notify those that were within immediate 6 feet of the potential exposure. And again, you only know that if you've been put on notice as an employer. If the employer's never been told, never received any type of notification, then the employer is not on the hook to do anything. Just wanted to make that abundantly clear. And then again, if we go to page 4, under subsection 9, sub 2, it goes into the notice requirement. It says an employer who provides a notice pursuant to subsection 1 shall provide a notice within 1 business day after being informed of the potential exposure to COVID-19. And then sub B and C talk about the representative of the employee, if applicable, they need to be notified in both English and a language that the majority of the employees speak. Again, we have work sites where the daily communication may be in a whole host of languages except English. And we've heard this from our Tagalog-speaking community. We've heard this with our Spanish-speaking community. But there's a whole host of communities out there where they walk in, and from the moment they clock in to the moment they clock out, they don't utter a single word in English because everybody there may be from a particular community where they all speak a certain language. So we want to make sure that we're informing them in their language. And then we want to make sure that the communication, that the way that the employer is notifying those who were potentially exposed, those that were within 6 feet, that they do it in a way that they're accustomed to communicating. So if text messaging is how you normally notify somebody of anything going on in the workplace, or if it's email or a phone call or sending out a letter, whatever it may be, we want to make sure that you're capable of doing it that way. We don't want to tie your hands to doing it in a specific manner that is not accustomed to that particular place of employment. And I want to draw attention to this particular language. One of the questions that I got is, well, how do I make sure they got it? I don't want to be on the hook as an employer if my employee did not receive it. Note that this particular section triggers language specifically in sending. You meet your burden, or what we are asking that employers do, the moment they send it out. Whether or not that email was received, that text message was opened, that letter was opened, whatever it may have been, that takes the onus already off the employer. The employer is just required to send, and we want them to do that within 24 hours or 1 business day, and whatever your business day defines to make it easier for the employer, as 24 hours may not mean the same thing to everybody. And then if we continue on page 4, it says in sub 3, this is another requirement that we want to add. In addition to the notice required to subsection 1, where you have to notify him via text, email, whatever it may be, we also want the employer to notify the employee who has potentially been exposed of any benefits relating to COVID-19 to which the employee may be entitled to under applicable federal or state law or local ordinances, including without limitation workers' compensation, leave available for illness for COVID-19, sick leave, etc. What we're doing here is we want to make sure that once you've put the employee on notice, you may have potentially been exposed, you may have been within 6 feet, you put them on notice. We also want to make sure that they understand what potential protections, benefits are out there for that employee. Often you'll hear about folk who are scared to speak out because they don't necessarily recognize or understand that there may be some protections where it's okay for them to take a day off or whatever they have to do. So that's why we have that language in there. And then subsection B, which is again in page 4, line 27, says the plan and standards used for disinfecting and cleaning that the employer maintains or plans to implement and maintain. Such plan and standards shall comply with the guidelines set forth by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and by COVID-19 Prevention Program established pursuant to Section 11 of this Act. So what we're doing here is not only are we going to let the employee who is potentially exposed know what protections they have and what rights they have under federal and state law, but then we also want to ensure them that there's going to be some mitigation cleanup procedures in place, right? So if I could use my own law office as an example, when we had a potential exposure, we immediately went and sanitized that whole area to the best of our ability. We disinfected it following CDC recommendations. And my understanding, and from every conversation I've ever had with anybody I know that owns a small business, this is what they do too. This is exactly what they do. Again, most of us, in my opinion, most small businesses and big businesses are already doing this, period. In fact, most of us are already disinfecting daily anyways. But again, we just want to ensure that we're doing that and that the employer knows that. And it's important that the employer knows that, that the employee knows that. And it's important that the employee understands this, because once you're telling the employee, this is what I'm going to do to ensure that in case you weren't, even though you might have been exposed, but you go and do a test and you find out that you're fine, you still want to know that you're coming back to a workplace where some mitigating factors have triggered and that folk are taking some preventative measures. Again, we're doing this already, but there's just anecdotally some employees who have given us numerous examples, and you'll hear from them when we get to that portion of the support for this bill, explain why that's so important. Section 10 of the bill, that's page 4, lines 34 through 44 of page 4, are going to completely be eliminated. We're going to completely take them out. And the reason Section 10 is being completely removed is that it is duplicative, it is unnecessary. Section 10, Nevada Revised Statute 618.445 already has these retaliatory protections in place. And so there is no need to restate them here. And because it's already covered by the NRS, I am removing it for redundancy purposes. So Section 10 is completely being removed, as that is already in statute now. Now I'm going to page 5, Section 11. In page 5, Section 11, there's one big thing. There's two things that I'm doing there. I am removing or changing the phrasing of COVID-19 prevention program to COVID-19 mitigation program. And the reason I'm changing that is because we want to make sure that we're not misleading the public and specifically our employees. The word prevention entails something that should have done previous or prior to. And really what we're doing is mitigating the situation, right? An individual indicates to the employer that they may have been exposed to COVID-19. Then the employer takes mitigative actions, right? And in response to that. So that's why we're changing that. You also see a technical change. In Section 11, there is a reference to the board throughout that. That was an error, as the board that it's referencing, pursuant to an NRS 618.5851B, does not have the authority to do that. So we are just removing that altogether. So I wanted to explain those technical differences and then go into what that section actually does. So an employer shall establish, implement, and maintain a written COVID-19 prevention program. Number one, I want to make it abundantly clear. One of the questions that I got and some of the feedback that was given to me is we don't want to, that may be too onerous now. And I had the opportunity to speak with our Department of Business and Industry Division of Industrial Relations, and specifically as to our OSHA requirements. That is already required now. And so we wanted to make it abundantly clear that this is not necessarily new. However, I do want to have this language in there clarified because pursuant to NRS 618.383, that deals with the establishment of safety program, that is already a requirement. But there isn't a specific mention of COVID-19. And hence, I think that this overly emphasizes a requirement that you have to maintain a written COVID-19 prevention program. They will tell you now that per OSHA, when they go into and have communication with an employer now, this is a requirement that they demand of them now. So again, this is already a practice, but what I want this to do is serve as a notification and more of an educational component, more than anything, to our employers and employees that this is a requirement. So again, this is not new, this is already required. So we want them to have and implement and maintain a written COVID-19 prevention program. And then we want to then specify that such a prevention program must comply with any standards concerning COVID-19 as set forth by the OSHA, OSHA, I'm just reducing that, OSHA, the Department of Labor, and the division and board as applicable. An employer shall provide a copy of COVID-19 prevention program to an employee upon the employment of the employee and train its employees on COVID-19 prevention program. So again, I've talked to numerous small businesses, my office included, and we recently, in the last 8 months, hired 2 new individuals. And the very first thing we did is walk them through our safety protocol, COVID-19 prevention program. Every time somebody sits there, we got to wipe it down. And anytime somebody goes into that particular office, we have to clean it. We went through all that. And then we have the protocols in writing, and we keep them around the office so that everybody knows what their obligations are. And for me, for example, in our office, there's some folk that work in a cubicle. Their responsibilities are very different from the folk that work in the front desk. So we try to specify those requirements, that program, depending on who's where. But the fact is, you have to have some type of program in place because we are all doing this already anyways. And then it goes into an employee may file a complaint with the division of his or her employer if they do not comply with subsection 2. And again, this is something that employees can do now. And then walking quickly through 4 and 5, and if an employee makes a request for a copy of the COVID-19 prevention program, the employer shall provide a copy within 1 business day of the request. If an inspection of the employer occurs for a violation, any standard concerning COVID-19 set forth by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration of the United States Department of Labor, the division, or the board as applicable, division shall review the COVID-19 prevention program and implement and maintained by the employer. So again, this is already required. But we just want to make it abundantly clear that this applies to COVID-19. And we want to make it abundantly clear that an employee can request that within 1 business day. And the usage of 1 business day also goes to helping the business. If they're closed Saturday and Sunday, realistically, we don't want to make force that employer to take action over the weekend or whatever days that they're not working, but immediately within the next business day, they have to comply. And so with that, I think we can open up for questions, but I will say one last thing, Madam Chair and Vice Chair, is all the good actors that I know are already doing this. Those that are registered with our chambers, those who have made it a practice during COVID-19, during this pandemic, who have stepped up to the plate, all these individuals are already doing that. There's a select few that aren't, and that's why we come forth with this plan and we see the necessity for this requirement. We have said thank you so many times in so many different social media posts and in so many speeches to our essential employees, to all the folk who have stepped up during this pandemic. We consistently have said thank you to them. I think another way we can say thank you to them, to those who have stepped up to the plate while many folk were staying home and those that continue to wake up every morning to handle business for us. I think another way we can say thank you to them is by saying, at a bare minimum, we have a responsibility to say, you may have potentially been exposed. I mean, at a bare minimum, to say, here's what we're going to do in case there is an exposure. Here are the mitigating actions we're going to take. That is the very minimum we can do for our employees. I don't know how this can be overly burdensome and how we can argue that we're not doing this already. Good actors are already doing this. Let's just protect those who are unfortunately tied to a situation they can't leave and are working every day and night and don't have at the very least an employer who's stepping up to the plate and saying, let me just give you a heads up. That's all this bill does. With that, Madam Chair, any questions, I'll take them at this time.
And thank you very much, Mr. Flores. So with that, committee members, an excellent explanation and intention behind the problem that the bill is trying to solve. I do have one question, Mr. Flores, and we all multitask. So if you did address this and I didn't quite catch it, I apologize. So I'm looking on, let's see, it's page 4 of the bill. Let me find the right section. Under section 9, 3A, the benefits portion, where the employer should be informing the employee of any benefits that are out there. I know last spring and summer, in the nonprofit work that I do, I had to inform employees that because they were out sick, that they could get this benefit from their employer because they had not been informed. How do you see this working?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Assemblyman Edgar Flores, for the record. I see it playing out a whole host of different ways. So in my particular place of business, we have an employee handbook, and it is in an electronic format, and we consistently update it just to comply with different federal law. As we saw during the pandemic, specifically, we had instances where certain applications and protections were in place that triggered up to this month. And I know some ended in December of 2020. A few extra protections have gone beyond that. But that's the way we do that. I don't want to say that every place of employment would do it that way. I think other folk, and we're lawyers, so we chose to approach it through that lens. But other folk could simply direct individuals to the federal or state guidelines or websites or print that out for them. I mean, I don't want to tie anybody's hands specifically to say that there's a one-size-fits-all. And also, understandably, because every industry is unique, there are some protections that extended to some folk within a particular industry that didn't to others. So again, the idea here is just to not play the lawyer and have to break down a synopsis of every single rule in the NRS or federal law or regulations coming down or emergency measures, but rather pointing them in the direction and providing them that information. I think the easiest way would be through directing them to and printing out, quite frankly, just what those websites are. But if you're sending a text or an email, sending the links to the federal guidelines and state guidelines, something like that. Again, that's not going to be the best way for everybody, but employers are doing this now. Whatever procedures they have in place, I would say they replicate that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to understand, in your place of business, you have a bunch of lawyers. In mine, we do not. I think maybe I need to start thinking about hiring a lawyer who likes to do food pantry work also. So that I have that expertise in my shop, because things are getting more complicated by the day. So with that, committee members, the chair is back, but are there other questions from other committee members for Mr. Flores at this time?
Thank you so much, Vice Chair, for taking over for me. I appreciate that. Okay, I believe we will go to Assemblymember Tolles. Did you already ask your question?
I did not ask my question. Thank you. So thank you, Assemblyman Flores, and I always appreciate your presentations, and especially this one. I was having to do a lot of cross-referencing, and so thanks for taking your time going through it step by step, because there was a lot of little changes there. So my first question is there a penalty involved with not complying with this? The only thing I see is in Section 12 that the division may adopt regulations to carry out, and then of course there's certain enforcement measures under OSHA. Could you just walk me through that, please?
Yes, thank you for the question, Madam Chair, through you to Assemblywoman Tolles, Assemblyman Edgar Flores, for the record.
Flores, you can go directly to the member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the quick answer is we're not putting those in place. They are now in place via, as you've indicated, OSHA. And I know our Department of Business and Industry, Division of Industrial Relations, they have protocols in place now. When, if, for example, somebody has COVID-19 and you would fire them for that reason, there's triggers now for that. If they were to ask you, if an employee were to ask an employer for their prevention program, and they don't have it, or they don't wish to provide it, there's already rules in place that have to be triggered. And again, that's not something that we're adding. That's something that's in statute already.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Assemblymember Tolles, please.
Thank you. And so I'm trying to picture this. So, we own a business. We have 6 employees full-time and 4 part-time who come in and out on various days. And I appreciate this. We did actually, a couple of our employees are married to first responders, were exposed. So we had exposure within our office, and we did have a couple who got infected. And so we had to run our protocols. How do we respond to all this? And so we went through this exercise. And now some are already vaccinated, others are in the process and will as soon as it's available to them. And so I guess I'm just wondering, in your amendment, you already had to change some amendments to align with changes in CDC protocols. And I'm just wondering what this is going to look like a year from now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, by putting this into statute. If we find that we're successful, I hope, I'm optimistic, as more people get vaccinated, or as things keep progressing, if CDC guidelines get to a place where exposure notifications, and so on and so forth are no longer what they are today, we've now put this into statute. Could you just help me understand that?
Sure. Thank you, Assemblywoman Tolles, for that question. Assemblyman Edgar Flores, for the record. So I think there's multiple answers to that question. First, I am sympathetic and wishful and hopeful that this bill was not even necessary. With those that have fortunately have had the opportunity to get the vaccine, unfortunately, we've seen that they are still at times contracting COVID-19 afterwards. And so because we know that the vaccine is not 100% successful, because we know that not everybody is yet vaccinated, we still have a very large vulnerable group of folk, unfortunately, who need to be notified if they've been potentially exposed, number one. Number two, we are still in the infancy stages of understanding COVID-19 and the long consequences of it. And I agree with your sentiment that we may hit a point down the road where maybe a few years from now, maybe 8 months, I don't know, and nobody can really forecast that if everybody has the vaccination, there may no longer be the requirement because we've realized that no one is getting the disease again. But I will say we've seen strong and very, very meaningful industries step up. So specifically, I had at the onset of the conversation, I referenced how grateful we were that NRS 447.345 put into the Nevada Revised Statute, a whole host of preventative measures, a whole host of notification measures that applied specifically and only to public accommodation facility. And we did that because we recognized that we had a responsibility to take care of our employees and exactly at the same time try to slowly move towards a world where folk are comfortable going back to their place of employment. So I agree with you. There not only this bill, there are other sections of the Nevada Revised Statute that reference COVID-19. And I pray that you and I will be able to come back years from now and maybe just 2 years and be able to take all that out. I genuinely do. But because so many humans have died, so many people have been impacted by it, this life-changing pandemic is something that we're still going through. I think we have to still take this action now and be hopeful that in the future we can eliminate this language.
Certainly share that hope. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you for your questions, Assemblymember Tolles. I believe I also have a question from Assemblymember Kasama.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much, Assemblyman Flores, for this. I know this is obviously on your heart and making sure that we protect all of our citizens here in the great state of Nevada, and so I know how important it is. I do have concern where we have this amount of detail and regulation for this disease that we all hope is temporary. And so isn't this where we do look to OSHA, we do look to the Division of Industry Relations? Isn't that what we've tasked them with, is to take care of these things, to send notices to employers? I'm just concerned, you've got in Section 3.2, any mutation of it, who's going to decide if this is a mutation that covers it or not? In Section 9, you have the amendment for it being within 6 feet. I understand, if I recall correctly, that CDC even came out with it's within 6 feet for a period of greater than 15 minutes. And so who knows, as this disease goes along, other details that we'll find out or how it is easily transmuted. And don't we already have in statute that employers need to maintain, safety in the workplace, that it seems this would fall under? It is so well intentioned. We have other divisions and departments that are tasked with employer safety for their employees, and putting it into statute just doesn't seem like the right place to me.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Assemblywoman Kasama, for that question. Assemblymember Flores, for the record. I think the basic underlying question to your question would be, I hear you saying I agree, but should we do it in statute? Because I would hate to assume that anybody asking a question does not agree that we have a responsibility to notify employees, right? So I would assume that all of us are starting from.
Absolutely. That goes without question that I would agree with that.
And perfect. Thank you. And I would assume anybody asking me a question would agree with that basic premise. And so starting there, the question then comes to, should we, the state, through the Nevada Legislature, come into this space or not? And so my answer to that is yes. And here's the reason. Right now, when we talk about notification requirements, unfortunately, there is no real notification requirement coming down from the federal government. And because it's not coming down, there is no real requirement in place presently where we have a transparent, across the board statute that protects all employees. Now we do, it currently in statute now, have specific narrowly tailored sections of the NRS that only require notifications for some employees. And everybody said, that is great, we need those notifications. And we agreed upon that and passed that legislation. And I thought that was great because it went to the heart of how important notification is. But what does not follow is that if we agree to put in statute that this particular subset of employees require notification, that we would then disagree and say all employees require notification. And so if we've already consciously made a choice to notify some employees, the question now begs, why not notify all? And that's where we are now. If we didn't have anything in statute notifying any employees, there is zero language in statute now, and we were having this conversation and say, all of us collectively, let's put all the responsibilities to employee protections to different agencies, to different entities. I think I would follow and say that's the logic that we as a state have adopted and we're going to pursue. But we haven't done that. We've done the opposite of that. And so what I am saying is now let's mirror what we've said was a great idea for some employees and expand that notification to all employees.
So wouldn't it be better served to visit with our own Department of Labor and Industries to have clear guidelines, better notifications, encourage them to work with the employers better? Again, this is so narrowly tailored to an incident at this time in our history that might not be there. And I just am very concerned about this type of detail in statute that could, now we could have the next, the next disease, the next mutation, who decides that? And we could agree to disagree. I believe notification to all that could be harmed is very important. I disagree having this detail in the statute. So like I said, we may agree to disagree on this one.
Assemblymember Kasama, please remember to ask for follow-up.
And Madam Chair, if I may quickly respond, Assemblywoman Kasama.
Great, Chair.
Assemblyman Edgar Flores, for the record, I appreciate the sentiment, and I've heard this argument before. Oh, if we do this now for COVID, what else do we have to do it for? I don't know how many times you've been in the middle of a pandemic like this one, where thousands of Americans have died, where worldwide thousands, hundreds of thousands of humans have died. I think the scare tactic, the implication that if we do this now for one thing, what do we have to do it for next, is improperly placed. Because if you ask anybody who had an individual in their family die, I think they would respond to it by saying, we have to do this and more. And so I don't agree with the sentiment that this is just opening Pandora's box. This is a single isolated moment in our lifetime where we've been in the middle of a horrible pandemic. And we have a responsibility as elected officials of individuals who have representing 65,000, 75,000 individuals looking to you and asking you for an answer and punting the responsibility now, right now, in my opinion, in the session that's in the middle of a pandemic is not only irresponsible, but also a disregard for all the employees we have across the state who are just begging for, at minimum, something that all good employers are doing already anyways.
Chair.
Have a follow-up question, Assemblywoman Kasama?
Yes, I just want to clarify that I'm not punting the responsibility, and I have as much concern for those who have passed and who have become ill from this as anybody else. I am talking about what is the best vehicle for notification. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? I'm going to do a quick check of chat. Okay, thank you for the presentation, Assemblymember Flores. I'm going to move us into the testimony portion of the hearing. Broadcasting, can we please check the telephone line for those wishing to testify in support?
Yes, Chair. To testify in support of AB 246, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 741, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
My name is Paul Kappa, that's spelled Paulcatha, and I'm representing the Culinary Workers Union Local 226. The Culinary Union supports AB 246 because all workers deserve to be safe at work, and strengthening workplace safety and contact tracing is the right thing to do during an ongoing global pandemic. Hospitality workers receive protections similar to those in this bill during the 32nd special session in the historic SB 4, also known as the Adolfo Fernandez bill, named after a culinary union member who died after contracting COVID-19. Sadly, 127 culinary and bartenders union members and or their immediate family members have died from COVID-19, and 1,260 workers or family members have been hospitalized due to the virus since March 1st, 2020. The state of Nevada must extend COVID-19 protections and effective contact tracing procedures to all frontline essential workers, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. AB 246 will protect workers, put Nevada on a path to a full economic recovery, and help to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in workplaces. The Culinary Union urges the Nevada Legislature to support and pass AB 246. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Katha. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 658, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 658, please press star 6 to unmute.
Chairwoman Hergy, members of the Committee on Commerce and Labor. My name is Michael Giddings, MICHAEL-GITTINGS. I'm president of United Food and Commercial Workers Union, Local 711. I am here today in support of AB 246, which will require an employer to notify its workforce when there is a COVID-19 workplace exposure and ensures employees have the most accurate information regarding exposures in the workplace. Right now, there is no legal requirement for employers to notify workers of exposure or to notify authorities of outbreaks. While most responsible employers have stepped up to the plate by providing transparency and protections to their employees, this bill would mandate such protections for essential frontline workers who might otherwise be left exposed and unprotected by less responsible employers. We also believe many employers would benefit as well by the guidance and education that the bill provides. With infections and deaths disproportionately high in the Latino, Black, and Asian Pacific Islander communities, more information about workplace exposures can be the difference between life and death among frontline and essential workers. We believe this bill is consistent with Nevada's efforts to track and trace COVID-19 cases. We support provisions in the bill prohibiting an employer from taking retaliatory actions against an employee who is diagnosed with COVID-19 or who needs to quarantine or isolate due to contraction. Employers must also establish, implement, train, and maintain a written COVID-19 prevention program. The timing of this bill is critical. It is important to have a notification and planning process in place for businesses as the state transitions COVID planning and compliance to local governments on May 1. For these reasons, I respectfully urge your support of AB 246.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 836, please solely state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jessica Ferrato, Jessica-Ferrato. Today, I'm here representing the United Food and Commercial Workers in support of AB 246. I want to thank Assemblyman Flores for bringing this important bill forward. UFCW represents 6,800 workers in Nevada, many of whom work in grocery stores, retail establishment, chemical manufacturing, food processing plants, and the legal cannabis industry. The timing of AB 246 is critical. As the state approaches the transition of COVID planning and compliance, and as our state continues to reopen, it is important that protections are in place for all workers. Our workers won't have the ability to work from home or remotely. It will be critical as the state continues to recover that we continue to work to protect workers from this deadly virus. Employee notification and a COVID mitigation plan ensure that workers are provided with reliable information on any exposure and can take precautionary action to protect themselves and their families. Employee notification will help contain the risk of additional outbreaks, especially in the workplace where most exposure occurs. Our members have been on the front lines of this pandemic. We have seen up close that COVID-19 is not merely a public health crisis, it is a worker safety crisis. Many of our members have contracted the virus, and tragically, several have lost their lives to it. Employee notification and a mitigation plan will protect workers across the state as we continue to move forward towards recovery and normalcy. We urge your support of AB 246, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Ferrato, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 796, please solely state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Rusty McAllister, RUSTYMCALLISTER. I'm the Executive Secretary Treasurer for the Nevada State AFL-CIO. We stand in support of this legislation, AB 246. This legislation is needed, and it's long overdue. We tried to get something done during the special session, but due to the short time frame that was available to everyone to get things, the business of the state done, we were not able to accomplish it at that point in time. This bill will provide some much needed relief and guidance and also protection for Nevada's workforce. And I also speak on behalf of the Southern Nevada Building Trades Union, is in support of this legislation also, Madam Chair. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 577, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Chris Daly, D-A-L-Y, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. In our history, there have been few more challenging times than the one we find ourselves in right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. NSCA supports AB 246, requiring businesses to notify workers when there is a COVID-19 exposure in the workplace and requiring the development of a COVID-19 prevention program. NSCA has aggressively engaged in the issue of school safety during the COVID-19 pandemic. Last summer, we supported the work of the Department of Education to develop Nevada's path forward, a framework for safe, efficient, and equitable return to school buildings. We felt this was the proper framework, along with consultation with local health districts, to safely reopen and operate school buildings this school year. Safety in other workplaces, especially where large numbers of people gather and potential outbreaks are most likely, is also critically important. As businesses across the state open, AB 246 is needed to protect public health and workers at those businesses, many of whom are parents to students in our schools. We appreciate that during the COVID pandemic, many workers haven't had the option to stay home from work. As the state recovers from this pandemic, it is critical that workers can be notified and a plan be in place to protect employees and keep them safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 681, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Vince Saavedra, V-I-N-C-E, Saavedra, S-A-A-V-E-D-R-A. I'm here representing Union Iron Workers, and we are in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saavedra, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 292, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last three digits of 292, you are unmuted. Please double check that your phone is not on mute.
Good afternoon. Rob Benner, R-O-B-B-E-N-N-E-R with the Northern Nevada Building Trades. Every worker should have a safe workplace and should be notified in the event of a COVID-19 exposure. It is the responsibility of every employer to have a plan for COVID-19 prevention. We strongly support this bill and thank Assemblyman Flores for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
With the last three digits of 352, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Abraham Camejo, A-B-R-A-H-A-M, C-A-M-E-J-O. I'm the owner of Camejo Safety. We are a consulting firm, and our primary focus of business is the safety and health of our Nevada workers, working alongside small to large businesses, alongside with many of our union members, regarding compliance with OSHA and other regulatory agencies. We provide this type of training, and we're in support of Assembly Bill 246. Any businesses that have a successful COVID-19 mitigation plans has been crucial for the safety of Nevada workers and their businesses. I see this firsthand at job sites, and contract tracing is essential for helping us getting back to normal. Once again, we're in support for Assembly Bill 246, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Camejo. Broadcasting, next caller.
If you recently joined the call and would like to testify in support of AB 246, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you, Broadcasting. Let's move into testimony in opposition. Can we check the telephone line, please?
Yes, Chair, to testify in opposition on AB 246, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 114, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you. Greetings, Chair and members of the committee. It's Amber Stidham, S-T-I-D-H-A-M, on behalf of the Henderson Chamber, which represents more than 1,800 businesses throughout Southern Nevada. As an organization that represents the breadth of Nevada's employers in all business sector sizes, large and small, our Chamber is concerned about various aspects of the draft regulation as written. First, we want to emphasize that we appreciate the seriousness of COVID-19 threat to Nevadans and underscore the fact that chambers like ours and other business groups throughout Nevada have been at the table since the onset and will continue to work nonstop to address COVID-19 public health needs amongst our businesses. Our members are already committed to complying with the legion of already existing state legal mandates, regional and local guidance, including federal OSHA guidelines and those outlined by the CDC. And we do thank the bill sponsor for bringing this employer-centric bill forward, an employee-centric bill. As we can imagine, the speed in which it would need to be pulled together in today's ever evolving pandemic environment. It is a complicated task. Our members know that all too well. These complexities in mind, we believe regulations are the best regulations are those that include communication among stakeholders who can bring the knowledge and experience to the discussion. That said, we do have serious concerns, one, that our organization was not engaged in discussions during the development of this draft regulation, but we'll do our best to provide our comments in a very brief amount of time that we have left to address what could impact each and every single employer in the state, each and every single employee in the state. I'm happy to send a letter detailing our concerns, but for the most part, we look to seek clarity and address concerns that include time needed for workplaces to come into compliance, some of the vague language that could cause confusion for employers, the return to work details that can be complex for healthy, ill, or formerly ill employees, the COVID-19 program details that, and what employers need to meet to continually meet those changing guidelines, and notifications to outside individuals. I respectfully ask that all aspects of AB 246 is met with the seriousness that it deserves, especially considering that this may become statute. And to close, I'd just like to say that our businesses are working very hard to take measures to protect their employees and their customers amid the pandemic. As businesses start to reopen and as some continue to be closed altogether or are operating under restrictive measures, employers simply wish to know that if they take reasonable steps to follow the constantly changing health guidelines, that their businesses will be protected so they and their employees can continue moving into the recovery phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stidham, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 124. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Paul Moratkin, M-O-R-A-D-K-H-A-N with the Vegas Chamber. First, I'd like to thank the bill sponsor for meeting with the Chamber about AB 246. He was proactive, reaching out to the business community and seeking feedback from stakeholders. Those discussions have been helpful in understanding the intent of the bill and for us to share the COVID-19 efforts that have been undertaken by employers over the last 13 months. However, the Chamber is opposed to the bills introduced for several reasons. First, to my understanding, over 1 million vaccine shots have been distributed in Nevada, and I believe the positivity rate is now under 5% for over the last 2 weeks. We're making significant gains against our collaborative battle against COVID-19. Employers, for example, are providing notification, mitigation, on-site vaccine sites for their employees, providing time off to get the vaccine, and supporting PSA campaigns to get the word out to employees. They're working in partnership with the state and local governments in the battle against COVID-19. Many Nevada employers have constantly been trying to support their employees and their families during the pandemic. Nevada's employers have spent millions in PPE to protect their employees, reconfigured workspace to enhance safety standards, and for those that could, provide salary and health care benefits when they were closed, and provide flexibility for their employees when they were able to do so. In fact, the Chamber is working on SB 209 that will provide employees 4 additional hours of paid leave for employees to get vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccination. We believe this bill will add more regulations and requirements onto the existing standards from the federal government through the CDC and OSHA, the requirements to follow the government directives for employers, local government and health district guidelines, and SB 4 from the special session. When you combine all those, we're looking at an extensive list of different standards that employers must follow every day. The reality is those guidelines and standards are constantly changing, which require us to constantly pivot and educate Nevada's employers on the changing directives, guidelines, and rules. To codify additional requirements into state law is a concern, as we're constantly adapting our response to COVID-19 as a community, as a state, and as a nation. We are opposed to the logistical challenge of the broadness of the notification process and the lack of flexibility of under state law. For example, in the original part of the bill, hospitals, healthcare facilities, clinics, and doctors and pharmacies, in theory, would have to notify their employees every day of a potential exposure. We are reviewing the proposed amendment from the bill sponsor, and we will follow up with him as soon as possible. The Retail Association of Nevada also asked that I register their concerns today on their behalf. Thank you, Chair, for your time and the members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moratkin, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 638. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Alexis Motorex, ALEXIS with the Nevada Chapter Associated General Contractors, representing the commercial construction industry in northern Nevada. We are here with some concerns on AB 246, but not opposed to the intent. The notification requirements contained in the bill as drafted and as presented with the amendment are troublesome to us. Construction sites often have hundreds of different employees working on them each day, spread out over acres of land. It would be impossible for the contractor to notify each employee of each sub or sub of subs, as the information is not tracked and would be too burdensome to do. Instead, we would like to see the requirement be that the primary contractor is responsible for notifying their own employees and each subcontractor with which they are contracted, and then the subcontractors would be responsible for communicating with their own employees. It is actually what our members are currently doing and have been doing since the beginning of the pandemic. We welcome the opportunity to work with the sponsor and stakeholders to accomplish the intent, but address some of our concerns as this bill moves through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Motorex, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 139. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Housekeeping and committee members. Misty Grimmer, GRIMMER, with the Ferraro Group representing the Nevada Resort Association. We are in opposition to AB 246 as written. I know there are some new amendments which we will review, but in my initial read of those amendments, I don't believe they would change our position. We did meet with Assemblyman Flores and the proponents prior to session and again a few weeks ago, and appreciate their time in hearing our concerns. The gaming industry has taken many measures during the pandemic to help employees, including extending pay after the shutdowns and during the shutdowns, extending health benefits to laid off employees, and are now rolling out multiple vaccination sites. During the summer, when COVID was rampaging our state, the legislature made and took steps to protect workers in the resort industry. The magnitude of the pandemic at that time called for drastic measures. It was a hard-fought compromise, and part of the agreement was that when the COVID numbers showed the public health emergency subsiding, the enhanced safety precautions would follow. Thankfully, all of the numbers are indicating a strong decrease in the spread of COVID and a rapidly increasing number of people getting the vaccine. Therefore, we question the need for this bill at this time. While the bill does seem to provide an exclusion for places of public accommodation, it does not provide any exclusion for the partner businesses that are located within our properties. Furthermore, it would appear the time frame of this bill is not tied to whether a public health emergency still exists, but is actually ongoing. While it's true that COVID may always be with us, the expectation that with vaccinations and immunity levels increasing, it will not always be a health threat requiring the extreme measures taken back in the summer or the proposals in this bill. Therefore, we respectfully request that the committee not process this bill. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your testimony, Ms. Grimmer. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 651. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Howdege and members of the committee. I'm Michael Alonso, and I'm here on behalf of Golden Entertainment. We met with the sponsor and the proponents of the bill and shared our concerns with them, and we're willing to continue to meet with them and to have discussions on this bill. However, we oppose AB 246 as written. We just got the amendment and are looking at it, but don't have an opinion yet as we haven't had the time to examine it. Golden Entertainment operates hotel casinos that are subject to the safety provisions contained in Senate Bill 4 that was discussed by the previous speakers, and we're still looking at the amendment to understand whether or not the amendment would change anything with public accommodations facilities that would affect us. But Golden Entertainment also operates numerous tavern locations throughout the state and operates restricted gaming and non-restricted gaming operations as a slot route operator within gaming locations that include taverns, bars, restaurants, and other locations. Those locations are not subject to the SB4 requirements, but they still operate under many COVID-19 restrictions that are already in place, including the governor's declarations, other state requirements, and the mandatory requirements of the Gaming Control Board. The Gaming Control Board specifically requires that restricted and non-restricted locations, and I'm referring to the ones right now that don't have to comply with SB4, but they have to comply under those Gaming Control Board requirements with health and safety policies related to COVID-19 specifically, and these locations are also subject to other requirements. Those Gaming Control Board requirements specifically require licensees to inform local authorities and cooperate with them on contact tracing. They follow all the rules on quarantines, on notifying employees, and on having these plans. So we are concerned, as other speakers in opposition are concerned, about the timing of this bill and whether or not there's an end date. And we're really concerned about whether or not the things we're already required to comply with, which are very similar, and I agree with Assemblyman Flores that there are similarities that we're already doing, but there are differences as well that can create a lot of confusion when a business is trying to comply with all these requirements. And there isn't really a dynamic way of doing this in a statute that goes with the times. As this COVID-19 and the protocols around it changes, the CDC's already made significant changes over time on contact tracing, on what a close contact is, and how to deal with those situations. And I think we're following those guidelines, and we continue to follow them as they change. And putting something in statute, it just doesn't seem to be the right approach at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alonso. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 407. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, for the record, Randy Thompson, RANDI-THOMPSON, State Director for the National Federation of Independent Business, representing over 1,800 small business owners across the state. I really don't have much more to add to Mr. Alonso, Ms. Grimmer, Ms. Steedman, and Mr. Moratkin from the chambers. So I will just say ditto to all of them. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 496. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Alexandria Dazlich, D-A-Z-L-I-C-H, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Nevada Restaurant Association. The Nevada Restaurant Association is in opposition of AB 246 as it is currently written. Our restaurant operators have continued to act in good faith throughout this pandemic by taking steps that protect their employees and adhering to all local, state, and federal guidelines and directives. Some of these steps include installing plexiglass barriers, reconfiguring their dining spaces to account for social distancing, installing sanitation stations, providing PPE, as well as ample flexibility for employee testing and vaccinations. The NVRA takes the COVID pandemic incredibly seriously and appreciates the intent behind the bill. However, we believe AB 246 goes too far and opens up our operators to additional liability, despite their best efforts to guarantee employee and customer safety. We thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller.
If you recently joined the call and would like to testify in opposition of AB 246, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 739, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin. Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you, Broadcasting. Let's go ahead and move to the neutral position. Can we check the telephone line for those wishing to testify in neutral?
Yes, Chair. To testify in neutral on AB 246, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Okay, I would like to go to Zoom. I believe we do have Victoria Carrion here to testify in the neutral position. and she's with the Division of Industrial Relations. Ms. Carrion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Victoria Carrion for the record. I am the administrator at the Division of Industrial Relations, and our agency has been at the forefront of the COVID-19 response from the very beginning. We have been advising businesses on how to comply with the governor's directives as well as doing OSHA enforcement. So we appreciate working with Assemblyman Flores on this bill and addressing some of our concerns. We are testifying neutral today. So in answer to some of the issues that have been brought up in terms of retaliation, that section 10 is being proposed to be deleted. We did just want to provide a little bit more information about the existing law. NRS 618.445, we call that our whistleblower protection program, and that is actually required by federal OSHA. So this is Nevada's version of the whistleblower protection program. And it's a very key part of ensuring that employees who have COVID or have been exposed to COVID, if they have any retaliation, that they have a way to get back wages or be reinstated. And so we have been dealing with this on a regular basis. There's also a federal emphasis program that was recently released on COVID-19 that places an emphasis on the whistleblower protections. And so Nevada will be adopting that with some changes specific to our state, and we will be emphasizing those whistleblower protections, and just wanted to make sure that the committee knew that we were working on that very studiously. The other item I wanted to comment on is the written COVID mitigation program. As Assemblyman Flores also mentioned, NRS 618.383 already requires a written workplace safety program. And as part of the guidance that our agency has been providing to employers, we have made it clear to them that they need to be amending that existing workplace safety program to include COVID-19. So many of those provisions that are in there, we have already been requiring employers to do. Having it in this bill will help make it more clear that COVID-19 needs a prevention program. So with that, we're available for any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Members, any questions for Ms. Carrion? Okay, thank you for being here, Ms. Carrion. Oh, Member Tolles.
Yes, thank you. And appreciate having the ability to talk to the Division of Industrial Relations. So just to make sure I heard you clearly, so the written plan is already in statute through NRS 618.383. That's to have a written plan in place, but does that also include the written notification, or is that?
Thank you, Victoria Carrion, for the record. Madam Chair, through you to Assemblywoman Tolles. So currently, under current law, there is not a requirement to notify employees of having that they have been exposed to somebody who has COVID. So that is not currently required. So that part would be new. But there is a requirement to have the written workplace safety program that takes into account COVID-19 and how to mitigate the hazard.
Thank you. And follow up, Chair, if I may.
Yeah. Member Tolles.
Thank you. And so, and then the first part of what you said is that currently you have already been enforcing the safety standards in compliance with the CDC and then adjusting accordingly as the CDC requirements change over this past year, and you will continue to do so with or without this bill. Is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Assemblywoman Tolles, Victoria Carrion, for the record. So yes, our agency has actually been enforcing the governor's directives. And so as those have evolved over time, we have issued additional guidance to employers. We try to keep it as broad as possible because, as you stated, things do change over time. But yes, we have been enforcing those and providing guidance during this time period. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair, for the indulgence.
Thank you for the questions, and thank you for being here, Ms. Carrion. Members, any other questions? Okay, thank you. With that, I will call Assemblymember Flores back up for any closing remarks he would like to give.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assemblyman Edgar Flores, for the record. I first wanted to say thank you to all those who called in support and opposition, particularly those who called in opposition. I had an opportunity prior to even submitting any language to legal I had an opportunity to speak with the Metro Chamber, the retailers, the Resort Association, and sit down with them and give them an opportunity to hear me out and what we were trying to accomplish. They provided a lot of feedback, and through that feedback is really where this amendment came from and why the original bill as written specifically carved out the public accommodation facility. As we talked about, the the resorts already now have to do a whole host of things pursuant to NRS 447. And so I am grateful to their feedback. Now I understand, and I told them early on that I never expected them to come in support of a bill simply because I amended it. But I just did want them to know that the bill was amended, specifically came out at a drafting, excluding them. The bill is now being amended to address the concern with the medical facilities, as they already have to follow very stringent, actually more stringent guidelines pursuant to federal law under the Ryan White Act. And I also eliminated Section 10 because that raised a lot of questions by some of the opponents. And I took that out completely again because we recognize that there was already language in the NRS that addressed that issue, and we did not mean to want to muddy the record. To the Henderson Chamber, I am apologetic to you. I reached out early on to the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce, but inadvertently missed you. And I know there's a few other chambers from up north that I also missed. That was not intentional. I will be sure to, as we continue to work on this legislation, to include you in in that roundtable. And then lastly, I just want to say thank you to everybody, namely our employees in Nevada. This bill's for you. I want you to know that I see you. I have a responsibility to you. I hear your concerns, and this is a bare minimum I can do as legislators come forth and at a minimum ask that you be notified if you've been exposed. Something that every opponent agrees that their clients are already doing anyways. So this is just to capture those few bad actors that aren't doing this. But to all the employees in Nevada, I see you, and I'll continue to fight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember Flores. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 246. Members, the last item on our agenda for round one of Commerce and Labor is public comment. While we give those listening over the internet time to call in, I will just go through our usual public comment housekeeping. I would like to remind those present that the period for public comment is an opportunity to discuss general matters that fall within the purview of this committee. The public has already been given time to support or oppose specific legislation. We open and close hearings on bills so that we can establish a record of public testimony on a bill. Therefore, public comment is not intended to be a continuation of a bill hearing. I would like to remind everyone that we do limit public comment to 2 minutes. And again, just remember to address your remarks to items that fall within the jurisdiction of Commerce and Labor. If your remarks are outside of our jurisdiction, I will ask you to redirect them or terminate them. Please always be respectful of committee members and other witnesses. Do not comment on testimony provided by other speakers, and please do not make personal attacks. You may always submit written remarks for inclusion in the record. With that, broadcasting, do we have anyone on the line for public comment?
To take your place in public comment, please press *9 now to join the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much, broadcasting. And thank you, members. This concludes our meeting for today. I would like to remind everyone that we will be having a second Commerce and Labor meeting tonight at 6 p.m. We are adjourned. Thank you.